Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and the absolutely wild first round of the playoffs that we have been privileged to watch continued tonight. Logan, when the Timberwolves went up 3-1, obviously all hell broke loose at that point. But then they lost Anthony Edwards, they lost Dante DiVincenzo, and it seemed that the window had opened for the Nuggets comeback. And I said, as much as Denver deserves to lose this series and the Timberwolves deserve to win it, I just think that Minnesota has lost too many bodies, and Denver, more likely than not, is going to come back. And then what happened? Ayo Dosunmu goes out with an injury. The man who had 43 in that incredible Game 4 win can't even play tonight. The Timberwolves, who are so defined by their top seven, are without three of their top seven basketball players in this game, including, of course, their best player, Anthony Edwards. And they finish off the Denver Nuggets slogan. The Denver Nuggets, who were champions in 2023, who have had expectations of contention every year since, go down to a very shorthanded Timberwolves team. Who do you think this said more about? Do you start with giving credit to the Wolves for finding a way to win, or getting into the Nuggets for losing in circumstances when so many things lined up for them? You talk about inexcusable. I've never seen a clear instance of there being no excuses. The other team has every excuse in the world, and they're the ones who got it done.
They played harder. And I mean, you talk about that window to win this series. That window turned into about the size of a warehouse door where you could drive some 16-foot pieces of wood through the door, man. This is an inexcusable loss. There's no way the Nuggets should have showed up and performed as sorry as they were tonight. This is a damning loss for Denver. And that's why I want to start with them. I think this, to me, and let's be clear about something, Minnesota is a very good matchup for Denver and what they do. Like, in a lot of ways, Tim Connolly, former GM of the Denver Nuggets, constructed this roster to take down Denver, right? Like, they were deliberately built this way, and they are a great matchup. But considering the fact, and I've never seen this before, a team being down their three best guards in a lineup, and they are still able to withstand and defeat a team that I've held in really high regard. I just don't think this Denver team works in the playoffs anymore, man. With what we have seen over the past few seasons, and I don't want to rewrite anything that the old Denver team did. They earned that title. They balled out. Jokic, Murray, MPJ, that whole team earned that championship. This says nothing about the Nuggets of old that did that. This says a lot about the Nuggets of right now. And the reality is they just do not have the athletic imposition to compete in the playoffs. That's my conclusion. Because if this was going to happen to the Minnesota Timberwolves, down Anthony Edwards, Dante DiVincenzo, Ayo Dosunmu, this was an inevitability. This was going to happen against San Antonio. This was going to happen against OKC. I don't know when it was going to happen, but it was inevitable. And props to Minnesota for this is what Denver deserves. They made their bed, and now they got to lay in it.
Totally.
And the most inexcusable thing to me, you know what? Jamal Murray had one of the worst games I've ever seen from him in his playoff career, and he has earned such a reputation of a playoff riser, playoff performer, clutch kind of guy. This was a bad matchup for him, and he didn't pull his weight. And I'm not going to make any excuses for him. The guy gave you 12 points in a game where their backs were against the wall, and he went 4 of 17 from the field. Inexcusable. The most inexcusable part of this loss to me for Denver was their effort, plain and simple. And I just cannot get over that, Carson. 57-46 in the rebounds category. They got beat by 11. 19-6 in O boards. They got beat by 13. 20-4 in second chance points. They get beat by 16, and they turn the ball over 5 more times in Minnesota. And the worst part in that effort category to me was the straight line drives. Too many easy buckets in the paint. I am embarrassed for Denver, and I am embarrassed that I have gone to bat so long for Denver. This is one of the worst playoff losses I have ever seen.
Genuinely.
And we maybe saw the worst one ever today in the early game. And I'm just straight up disappointed, man. This is a loss that is making me have somewhat of a referendum on the Denver Nuggets and what they need to do moving forward.
Yeah, I think we've been there throughout this series because even if they got through this one, once they went down 3-1 in the fashion they did, there was no denying how glaring the athletic limitations of this team were. And the fact that this roster construction was just not actually that of a legit contender, it is an absolutely humiliating playoff loss for the Nuggets. And I think it might be the worst playoff loss any team has taken in the 2020s. Like, I'm thinking 2022, the Suns going down to the Mavs as ugly as they did in game 7 when they won 64 games coming off the finals appearance. That was really bad. The Lakers in 2021, the year before, losing to the Suns first round, coming off the title. But that team wasn't that good. And those teams are going up against healthy basketball teams. And those teams were mostly healthy themselves. This is a Nuggets team that is without Aaron Gordon. So that is significant, but they're healthy otherwise. And they're going up against a team
Peyton
that's
Watson too, but
ravaged. They're out Peyton Watson
stands.
too. But compared to being without Ant and being without Dante and being without Ayo Dosunmu, you just completely are out of excuses. I do think we see how vitally important Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson are to the functionality of this team defense, like how desperately they need athletes like that on the floor and how important Aaron Gordon is to this team in so many different ways. And we knew that. And we've talked about that. Over the last 2 years, they've been an elite team when he's on the court, and they have been just a good, not great team when he's off the court. And they can really get their ass kicked athletically when he's off the court. But at this point, do you have real expectations that Aaron Gordon is going to be healthy over the course of a season through a playoff run? Because he wasn't last year and he wasn't this year. And I don't really see that getting better when you have a lot of the recurring stuff with the hamstring consistently being an issue. So I'm worried about his health in a big way when he is so vital to making this team actually ever play like an elite unit. They need Aaron Gordon out there to do that. But like you said, this is just such an athletic bludgeoning. And that was the theme in all of the games that Denver lost. And even without Anthony Edwards, one of the best athletes in the NBA on the floor, and even without Ayo Dosunmu, one of the fastest players with the ball in the league on the floor, Minnesota still has meaningful athletic advantages at every position, dude. They cannot contain Jaden McDaniels' dribble penetration. And he's too big, and he's consistently just making these little floaters over top, or he's finishing at the rim and abusing their lack of rim protection. They could not contain Terrence Shannon Jr. drives. He was too fast with the ball. He's too big. He's too athletic. He's getting all the way downhill. And again, they don't have the help defense. They don't have the rim protection. Rudy Gobert is kicking Jokic's ass on the offensive glass in this game. Julius Randle, not a great shooting night, but is just such a walking physical advantage. And part of that is Aaron Gordon being out for sure. Denver is without two of their best athletes. But again, every position, it's like, yep, they are bigger or they are certainly stronger, faster, more athletic. And it's almost impossible to overcome that in a playoff series. Even when you have the skill advantage, as we saw, Denver pretty much purely lost this game because they got their ass kicked so badly in the possession game because they were minus 13 on the offensive glass, which is absolutely terrible. I mean, Gobert, 7 offensive boards. Jokic was not nearly good enough at anchoring the defensive glass in this game. But then just collectively, the Timberwolves were a much better rebounding team, and they were faster to every 50-50 ball, like you're saying. And then at the same time, what have they consistently done? In big moments in this series, they have been able to overwhelm Denver's best offensive players, even physically, with ball pressure, with their size, with their length, and force them into bad turnovers that they can then turn into offense. So it's just such a consistent recurring theme. There's no way to overlook it. And there's no way at this point when, for the 3rd straight year, the thing that gets Denver is you go up against a team that is way more athletic than you, that is more physical than you, that is deeper than you. Even as that depth was stretched as thin as it could be with Minnesota, they still have more dudes stepping up. They can still find a Terrence Shannon Jr. who can step up and produce in a big way in a game like this. They're still getting better collective contributions. And these great defenses are able to grind down your offense, and it's just not the same in the playoffs as it's been in the regular season. And you brought up Jamal Murray's reputation as a playoff riser. Brother, we're throwing that out the window. Since 2024 in the playoffs, Jamal is 21 points per game on sub 51% true shooting. Every series that has gone out, he's been noticeably bad in against great defenses, but it's inexcusable. And Jokic, look, he was good tonight and he was good in game 5, but obviously this is the worst playoff series of his career. This is a total black mark on him and his basketball resume because games 2 through 4 were as abysmal as anything we've ever seen from a player of his caliber. Like, genuinely, that was horrifyingly bad basketball, really on both ends, but especially just offensively being as egregiously bad as he was. So across the board, you just look at everybody for Denver and you're disappointed in where the roster construction fell short, in when the best players fell short, and like you're saying, in their inability to at least win the effort category when they are playing against a team that's down so many talented players. It's across the board just a complete failure by Denver. And props to Minnesota for getting it done, because there are a lot of teams who can't come together and bring this level of intensity and urgency and everything that they did. But come on, man. Denver, this is a hell of an opportunity. You were gift wrapped and they squandered it.
Gift wrapped is right, man. And there's two guys I want to give credit to Minnesota for holding it together and not falling apart. The first guy I want to give credit to is Rudy Gobert, who, I mean, the Gobert-Jokic matchup was the biggest one of the series. And even though Jokic got back on track, Gobert was able to limit him enough to build in that margin for Minnesota, right? Forcing turnovers, making him pass up out of looks, making him take tough shots, and contesting threes at a high level. And I was thinking about this during the game. I've talked to a lot of Minnesota fans, and it's a really interesting thought exercise. And there's been this kind of perpetual swinging pendulum with Rudy Gobert and with Naz Reid, and especially when Anthony Edwards is healthy. And a constant complaint I hear from Minnesota fans, and a philosophical discussion we have about the Wolves reaching their apex, is about what Rudy does to the team spacing when Anthony Edwards is on the court, and how you can play off of him and the issues that poses, and how much easier the offense flows when he's not on the court. A situation like this really accentuates the value of a Rudy Gobert.
100%.
And it's basically just the defensive floor that he gives you, because you can complain, and they're all valid criticisms about the ceiling that he puts on your offense. But a Rudy Gobert is the reason that down all your best guards, your 3 top guards on your roster, in a playoff game against the league's best offense in the regular season, you are still able to go out there and win. Like, this series and this game, above everything else to me, is about Rudy Gobert, how impactful of a basketball player he is, and how underappreciated he has been for so long, man. He is Minnesota's MVP in this series. And then the other guy I do want to give credit to is Chris Finch. One, that is such a hard sell job to your team, man. Being down all these stars to get them to go out there and fight like this. And I know Minnesota's rugged, they're rough, they're tough as nails. Like, this is a team that's going to play up to the moment. But for Finch to consistently bring this kind of effort and energy out of them is really impressive. And also, the strings he's pulling, I just want to give him credit for that too. The Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, big wing kind of looks were awesome in this game and completely overwhelmed Denver physically. Turning to Terrence Shannon Jr., who I liked in the draft. I thought Terrence Shannon Jr. was a first-round caliber draft pick, and the fact that the Wolves got him so late. And mind you, they're talking on the broadcast, this guy's a second-year guy. I'm not at all surprised that Terrence Shannon Jr. can step in here as a second-year man.
He's in his mid-30s.
Because he's in his mid-20s, exactly. Yeah. Like, the guy has been around and played a lot of important basketball. Like, he was a steal for them, and he's another guy they can turn to. So I'm in awe. I am shocked that the Timberwolves won this game and how they did it. But the two guys that, and shout out McDaniels for the offensive game he had too. Shout out Terrence Shannon Jr. for doing work. But yeah, the first two guys that I look at are Gobert and Finch. But this is a real testament to the Wolves as a whole and as a team.
Dude, the numbers won't be quite as good after tonight because Jokic did win the battle with Gobert in terms of what Jokic was doing offensively in this game. Over the course of the series, though, it was a convincing victory for Gobert. It was the best individual defense we've ever seen on Nikola Jokic, and the worst offense that we've seen from Jokic in the playoffs. Part of it was just him really struggling as a shooter, but Gobert made everything hard. When guarded by Rudy in this series, Nikola Jokic coming into this game was 22 of 60 from the field. Like, it's just incredible how much he was able to affect him. And it is so disappointing overall across this series how much Jokic played below his standard. And this series is a real low point for Denver because they didn't lose to an awesome Minnesota team that went to the conference finals at full strength like they did in 2024. And they didn't lose to the eventual NBA champion Oklahoma City Thunder in 7 games like they did last year. They lost to a team that physically was hanging on by a thread in 6 games. And they went 1-2 against them effectively in games that Anthony Edwards didn't play. And I'll be honest, at no point in this game did I think, yeah, Denver's the better team. Yeah, Denver's going to win. I was like, oh shit, it's going to happen again. They're just overwhelmed physically again. They're going to get their asses handed to them physically and athletically again. And if you look at the trend over these last 3 years, Logan, Denver has been the best regular season offense in the NBA. They have a 120 offensive rating over these last 3 years in the regular season. In the playoffs, they have a 110 offensive rating. It is such a significant drop off. And I mentioned how much Murray has dropped off in effectiveness. Nikola Jokic too. I mean, still monster counting stats, of course, 27, 13, 8.5. And you can't just take that for granted, but 59.5% true shooting. That's a significant major drop from what he does in the regular season, like a 7-point drop off and close to 4 turnovers a game. And again, if you look at the last 3 series, and this one is different. This one is way, way worse from Jokic than last year was or Minnesota in 2024 was. But again, in the battle against the great defense, the best offensive player on the floor and the guy we've been calling the best offensive player in the league didn't rise to the level where he was the dominant player in that series. The collective great unit overall got him. And especially if you look at, I mean, the deciding game 7 against Minnesota, game 7 last year. And this one is different because he wasn't bad in game 6. He was good tonight. But I mean, there's just no way to excuse the totality of what he did to put them in the position where they're down 3-1 and they lose 3 straight games in which he is so bad. So the offense, I really do think not being able to carry its weight is the biggest problem here. That is the trend. I think being physically overwhelmed, athletically overwhelmed is a big through line there. I also think all of these teams that have beaten the Nuggets have been able to force Jokic to live more off the 3 ball, and he's gone cold as a 3-point shooter. And at this point, I mean, in the playoffs over the last 3 years, he's 30% from deep. So it just doesn't seem unlikely to me that that's going to remain an issue for him. If you are funneling the Nuggets offense to a bunch of Jokic pick and pop threes, that's a good outcome for you as a defense. And he's got to find a way to be more consistent with that shot because it's just consistently dragged his effectiveness down in these series. And then I do look at him and Jamal both on the other end. Jamal Murray, man, holy shit, what an F- game he played today. I mean, whenever they needed a big shot, he bricked it, 4 of 17 from the field. But defensively, Minnesota is going right at him. Jaden McDaniels is going right at him. Terrence Shanks Jr. is going right at him. And he just can't offer any resistance. And then obviously Jokic's lack of rim protection is a big problem here. And the effort throughout this series just was not there in most of these games. Tonight, he's not even really contesting many shots around the rim. And part of it is he was like teetering on foul trouble, but come on, man. Like, you just have to be more of a presence physically. You're obviously a very limited vertical athlete, but more effort, Denver. Like, more dudes who are like, oh shit, we're in a game 6. We're playing for our season. We need to win this. Like, as a basketball team, you didn't feel that from them.
None. I mean, I don't know about you, Carson. I think they have to compromise some of the skill that they have on this. There's 2 routes to me in Denver's reconstruction of this roster. Route 1 is sacrificing some of this skill that you have down the roster for more athletes. The other, well, actually, I guess there's 3. The second option is sacrificing even more athleticism and going all in on skill and getting guys like Brown and just flooding them with reliable shooters. The third nuclear option to me is maybe shopping Jamal Murray, but I really don't know what value he even has across the league and what kind of intriguing package, because it's not, I want to make this clear. Like, Jamal and Jokic are an elite 2-man offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are also they're not to this level, but it's almost like the argument that we make against Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns all the time, where it's like, well, when these two guys are together, they can make each other better offensively, but you're also sacrificing a ton defensively, one at the point of attack. And then, we always talk about this too, the center being your most important defensive position. And it's this stacking kind of component. And obviously, it looked the worst that it could look in this game because you're down such important athletes and such important guys to this defense and Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon. But I do just wonder, have we reached a stage where we've seen this consistent trend this year where all the best teams are super athletic and have all of these physical advantages? Is it just too much to expect from a team in the modern NBA to overcome big kind of defensive liabilities like that to win a title? And I just wonder if it's a super hard pill to swallow, considering just what both of these guys mean to this franchise. And they're both, Denver lifers, and they're super important to this franchise history. But I just wonder if on the court, if that's the right basketball decision to make and the right conclusion to draw from all of the past few years of the Nuggets coming up short in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation they're going to have, which is disappointing just because Jamal leveled up this regular season. I thought it was easily the best season of his career, like not even close. And yet you get into the playoffs and it is the same old story of him being worn down by full court pressure and struggling to get Denver into their offense early. And Jaden McDaniels has done an amazing job of that, but OKC did it to him last year. And him being forced to live off of such a tough shot diet. The finishing isn't good enough. He doesn't get to the rim enough, but when he did in this series, inside of 8 feet, he shot under 48%. Big ups to Gobert for that, of course. I mean, just amazing rim protection throughout the series. And also, I mean, we have to shout out Gobert's short roll playmaking today because he created some of the biggest shots of the game for Minnesota with a couple of really nice finds. That lefty wraparound pass as the shot clock was expiring.
Dude, I was 110% sure he was taking the ugliest left-handed scoop layup of all time.
Dude, like, he was just so under control this entire series off the roll. It was a different Gobert offensively. I thought he really was good as a finisher and a passer all the while. He was outstanding defensively. Rudy Gobert is no doubt the MVP of this series, but shout out to him. I was talking about what's wrong with Jamal Murray, though, and I do think you see this consistent trend of him being induced into such inefficient offensive performances against really good defenses, and it's so different from the regular season. Like when he and Jokic play together in the regular season over the last 3 years, they have a plus 14 relative offensive rating in those minutes. They are doing GOAT offense shit. They are doing Steph and KD on the floor together shit in the regular season. And in the playoffs, they have a plus 0.5 relative offensive rating. When those two share the floor, they are an average playoff offense, and they are an actively bad offense, a really bad offense when either one of those two is on the floor without the other. So it's hard because I do think their games complement each other so well. I think the Murray-Jokic two-man game is incredible. And I think it's both reality of the skill set, but also the chemistry they've built up. Like when that is flowing, it is the best offense in the NBA. But when you go up against these teams that are able to really affect Jamal first and foremost, it does make you wonder, is he expendable? Is there some sort of alternative here where there's a cheaper ball handling option? But I don't know. I don't know if there is. Like, they need somebody who can handle a big ball handling load and who can really initiate offense from the perimeter at a high level. And there's not that many of those dudes just sitting around. It'd be great if they had Ayo Dosunmu on their roster, right? That'd be like a budget guy who could bring a lot of that same value. But it's tough because you are trying to work around two below average athletes and two below average defensive players at the core of everything you're doing. And that worked to win a title in 2023, but that was a different NBA landscape than what we're looking at now. And there are so many of these crazy athletic teams that just feel like they have a major upper hand in all these different margins against Denver. So I don't know what to do about Aaron Gordon, because I do think if he was on the floor in this series 100%, we feel different about some of these things. I'm not saying it changes everything, but I'm saying it certainly changes a lot of the dynamics. Again, I mean, their defense was entirely different when he was on the court this year compared to off it, not even mentioning what he does offensively. And so I don't know that they can move him, but if they can't move him, it gets hard to really maneuver these pieces when Jamal Murray is a $50 million player. Christian Braun, obviously, is the guy you look at and you're like, yeah, I hope they can get off of him because he is just clearly not even close to justifying $25 million a year. But guess what? Everybody knows that. And that is a contract you're attached to through 2031. That's one of the worst contracts in the NBA. So if they can't get off of the non-shooting, needs to live in the dunker spot 6'4" guard who isn't even a good contested finisher in a playoff setting in the half court, like that could really hold them back. And then they have to find a way to pay Peyton Watson, who was so good this year and who we didn't get to see in the playoffs. So maybe there's a way that Denver talks themselves into, yeah, obviously we look super unathletic when we're missing our two best athletes and two of our five best players this year, and clearly our third most important player in Aaron Gordon. And like, I can see that angle, but at full strength, I mean, they just lost to Minnesota without Dante, Ant, and Ayo in this game. At full strength, are they contending with Oklahoma City? No, I really don't think so. San Antonio, I think they feel better about that matchup, but that's a team that's just going to keep getting better. And it feels like Denver has to actively get better. It doesn't feel to me like they can just essentially run it back and say, oh, if we're healthier, we'll be better.
I mean, I can see them talking themselves into running an iteration of this team back. My issue with that, though, is the fact that they still don't have good depth or guys that I really believe in, and they're going to have a really hard time finding them because of the contracts that we're talking about. That was a component why they had to move off Michael Porter Jr., even though he was such a good fit with this team, right? They needed more flexibility without the roster. They needed more and better depth, and that's what they got. And I wonder if they're going to have to make one of those kind of compromises. I doubt it would be Jamal, but that's where you really need to get rid of Brown. And I think it's a through line too with some of these other really good teams that we've seen in the playoffs this year. Minnesota having guys stepping up and performing isn't a shock. They got Dosunmu at the deadline because they made a move, and it was a really good trade and a really good deal. Okay, perfect. They got Terrence Shannon Jr. in the second round. That's just a home run draft pick, man, and he delivers when you need him to step up. They take a flyer in a shot, and he wasn't super impactful in this series, but like a guy like Bones Highland can give you a little juice. And at the core of this team, you know, their big three, well, with Ant down, obviously, are all really big, strong, physical guys. And so when you go down guys like that, like when you go down your two best athletes and you don't have anybody backing them up that are at the top, where getting paid the most money, guys like Jamal and Jokic that are available, it crumbles your defense. I don't know. I agree with you, though. If Denver chooses to run this back, I don't think they're a legitimate champ. I think this defense is too problematic. I even think with Gordon and Watson, and they've got to get off Brown. That's number one. And if they can't get off Brown, man, I think they're just fucked for next year. I can't lie to you. I think that's such an anvil of a contract, and it limits their flexibility and what, like, it's, you know, in the grand scheme of things of what guys are getting paid, it's not, you know, egregious, but that is such a hang up. You could get 3-4 really good players in your lineup with that money if you could just get him off your roster.
Or just one really good player instead of one unserious playoff player. Yeah. I think this team desperately needs more athleticism, as we've discussed. I mean, they need more defensive athletes across the board, and Gordon and Watson would help there, but I think they still need more. And I think they need more ball handling. And I'm not just talking about like dudes who can be primary or secondary ball handlers for you in certain units. I'm talking about dudes who can put the ball on the floor and make plays, like dudes who can attack closeouts and who can beat you as a driver. Like, think about what Jaden McDaniels and Terrence Shannon Jr. did and what Naz Reid can do off the bench, right? Those are guys who can put the ball on the floor and they can make plays. There aren't players like that around Murray and Jokic on this roster. There just aren't. Cam Johnson, you saw a little bit of it in these last couple games, but you didn't see it much throughout the season. Christian Braun, again, is just not good offensively at anything in the half court. I mean, good God, he had 3 points on 1 of 4 shooting today. Brutal. Spencer Jones, who they're having to start, I mean, he's a pure spot-up shooter, essentially. And you go down the bench, and it's like Tim Hardaway Jr. is a pure jump shooter. Bruce Brown, I'm not super high on giving you playoff minutes at this point. And that's why they turned to Tyus Jones. That's why we were getting Tyus Jones fourth quarter minutes for the Denver Nuggets, because he's somebody who can alleviate some of the crazy pressure in terms of ball handling on Murray and Jokic, and can maybe make a play for you with the ball in his hands when they just don't have other guys like that on this roster. So I'm looking at this team and I'm like, yeah, when you're playing against regular season defenses and everything is flowing and the Murray Jokic two-man game is just rolling and cruising, and those guys are both so efficient, and all you need around them is, oh, Christian Brown is a cutter and spot up shooting from Cam Johnson, and Aaron Gordon is just a really good all-around player. But there are less demands on what the role players around them need to do when you get into the playoffs, and the pressure picks up and the physicality picks up and the effectiveness of those two stars diminishes a bit. And also, defense is just tighter across the board, right? Teams literally close out harder, like teams stay attached more on off-ball screens. Everything is harder defensively. It is harder to navigate space against playoff defenses. They just need more dudes who can make plays and who can put the ball on the floor. So there's a lot of things you look at with this team and you question how they're really going to maneuver. Are they going to move off of Cam Johnson now as an expiring? Because $23 million, I think that's decent value for what he gave you this year. I mean, he was underwhelming for sure. You saw it start to flash what he can be in these last couple playoff games. It was too little, too late for sure.
I mean,
but it's like, if they can't get off the Brown contract, what are they even going to do? Because they're paying Jokic, Murray, and Aaron Gordon $142 million combined. And then Brown and Cam Johnson are both $20 million plus. They're still attached to Zeke Naji for another year. So they just don't have the money to go out there and like sign good role players to mid-sized contracts or move for those guys unless they move off of one of these 5 big contracts.
I think I'm just shopping Brown and I'm attaching first to him, man. And I'm begging a bad team to please take the contract, because I still do fundamentally.
It's 2031.
I mean, it sucks. I agree.
It hasn't kicked in yet. The extension hasn't even started, and we all can tell it's one of the worst contracts in the NBA.
Yeah.
So look, bro, I don't know. I'm not saying
I want Christian Brown. But I'm saying there's got to be some team that would take that if you attach the picks to it. I'm just saying, like, if you
give up your 2032 first, because that's the next one they can actually trade outright.
Take it, man. I mean,
that's probably going to be a really good pick. That's going to be well post Jokic Murray era. Probably suck.
I still fundamentally believe in the 3-man game of Jokic, Murray, and Gordon when they're healthy, though. So, I mean, what's the alternative, Carson? If you're not doing that, who are you flipping first, Gordon or Murray? Because, I mean, you're kind of making you're making an argument for both of these guys. Murray with his playoff shortcomings and letdowns, and then Gordon with his injury concerns. Are we reaching the nuclear option? We just blow the Nuggets all the way up? I mean, if you can't move off Brown, what's the next maneuverability spot? What are you doing if you're the GM?
I'd be really hung up on that question, man. I would, because I think Aaron Gordon at $35 million a year, essentially, if he's healthy for an entire playoff run, that is great value. Like, he is, to me, easily a top 40 player in the NBA. The guy positively impacts the game in so many different ways, and he ties so much together. But he played 36 games this year and wasn't healthy in the playoffs. He played 51 games last year and wasn't healthy in the playoffs. Wasn't fully healthy in the playoffs, at least. Didn't finish the playoffs healthy. But he's probably worth more to you than he is to anybody else, because every other team is going to have those same concerns.
Alongside Jokic.
Exactly. He is. He's the perfect fit alongside the Murray Jokic 2-man game. And yeah, alongside Jokic in general. And that's where I get so hung up. I'm like, what is the big seismic change that this team can make? Moving Murray is a massive gamble, because Murray is a huge elevator to this offense in the regular season. And you have to find a way to get that level of ball handling and shot making from somewhere else. You cannot take Jamal Murray off this roster and think, oh, Jokic is going to get us. Jokic is going to make everything fine. Like, no, man, absolutely not. Like, you need somebody who can be a reliable ball handler for you. So I really don't know. I mean, I really think it starts with trying to make a Brown trade, but I think that's going to be really hard to pull off. And that's why I wonder if we do just end up seeing a Denver team next year that's actually pretty similar to this year's. If we all say this isn't good enough, they're not going to contend, they need to get more athletic, they need to get more ball handling, and then they kind of look at their avenues and they're like, okay, but how do we actually do that? Because moving off of Aaron Gordon would be really scary, and moving off of Jamal Murray would also be really scary, but also running it back isn't going to be good enough, I don't think.
Would you do a Christian Brown from Malik Monk trade?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, dude. Malik Monk is a much better playoff basketball player than Christian Brown. And Malik Monk would actually be really valuable for this team as a bench ball handler who actually has some juice and somebody that can play as another ball handler alongside Murray. Like a guy like that. And that's the thing. Those players aren't impossible to find. They aren't. And again, Io going at the deadline without a single first round pick being exchanged. Like those are the sort of moves you make that swing playoff series and can totally change what you're capable of as a team. And I praised Denver's offseason last year. I did. I thought it was the best offseason they've had. And now I look back at it and I'm like, it still wasn't good enough. It still wasn't good enough because Cam Johnson throughout this year wasn't good enough. Tim Hardaway Jr. had a good season, but he was not a difference maker in the playoffs. Neither was Bruce Brown. Valanciunas wasn't even really playing in the playoffs. So all of this depth that they built up, it didn't actually matter that much. It wasn't really significant. Honestly, shout out to Spencer Jones for being the guy who stepped up the most and could actually give them some good playoff minutes.
I think it's because those are all guys who, well, Hardaway was a meaningful signing for this team. Didn't do a ton in the playoffs, but was still good for them. Like, there are a lot of players that are very rigid in their play style and like glued to a second unit that aren't really compatible with Murray and Jokic, right? That's what makes a team like San Antonio or Oklahoma City so awesome, because they're just awesome players off the bench, period. But you can also mix and match and run some of these lineups where they're on the court for you too. And then Denver, it's like, we don't have really versatile players that we can mix and match with. And these guys just aren't that good, by themselves. So
yeah, I don't see how they beat OKC, but I don't know that I see a way to reconfigure this roster where they beat OKC. Like, I think the window is more likely than not just closed. I think the West got too good and Denver's not good enough. And I don't know how that defense and the athleticism categories we're talking about get good enough, honestly. Like, they are just fighting such an uphill battle there, and the bar has gotten so insanely high in the West. So they've got a whole offseason to figure this out. We'll see what they do, but man, you take a hard look in the mirror and you look back, and I think they will continue to view 2024 as the biggest missed opportunity, because that was the pre-OKC and now pre-San Antonio even era. That was a year when you were still viewed as the best team in the West, and you blew a 20-point lead in Game 7. And if you get through that series, you've got Dallas, and you're probably favored in that series. And like, that was the best chance they had after 2023, and they just weren't good enough. And now we look at them and we're like, oh, they have Jokic, they have Murray, they have Gordon, they should be contending. But as a top-to-bottom team, they are not at the level of the top tier contenders in the NBA, and especially in the Western Conference. The last thing I do want to touch on before we move on from this is I thought Jokic's behavior was inexcusable in this series. And that's something else, dude. Like salt in the wound when you're already going out sad, and it's one of the most disappointing series from a superstar and an NBA legend in the history of this league, to do what he did in Game 4. And I did think it was classless by Jaden McDaniels to put up that layup. I thought that was totally unnecessary, and I thought it was unsportsmanlike. What Jokic did in response was totally excessive, like absolutely way over the top. And then the Io thing in this game, it's just nonsense. Like, why are you putting two hands? I'm sorry, not Io. He was
Jalen Clark.
The Jalen Clark thing. Like, why are you putting two hands on a player when the whistle has already been blown? You cannot do that. So I don't care that Jalen Clark pulls him down or whatever, or that he gave him a little push to the back first. Like, dude, the play has been dead for multiple seconds. You go up and put two hands on another guy. Like, you cannot do that. In fourth quarter, Game 6, your team is down. You haven't been good enough in this series. I just thought there was a lack of emotional control and composure from him. And it's especially like frustrating when you feel like that passion isn't being channeled positively. Like, where's that effort on the defensive glass? Wouldn't that be nice if maybe instead of getting super mad about this, you were playing a little bit harder on that end? And no, like, Denver was the team that played less hard than Minnesota this entire series, but they were the team that got angrier, and Jokic got angry. And it's just a little thing that I think rubs you the wrong way when it's like, this ship really feels like it's sinking even more so if the vibes get really bad. And the vibes were really bad. And I think this Denver team is extremely disappointed. I do think they thought they were going to do more in this 3-year window post-title than win 2 playoff series. They've won 2 playoff series. That's it.
I mean, and they know the circumstances too. Ironically, It's almost like the injuries put the pressure back on Denver, and they crumbled.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. The pressure was on them. Minnesota played free. Minnesota played hard. And Minnesota attacked, as Jaden McDaniels would say, all their bad defenders. Like Terrence Shannon Jr. stepping up and having 24. God bless him. Hell of a performance. Looked a little too easy against that Denver defense. It did. So I am a huge Aaron Gordon believer. I do think Peyton Watson was playing awesome basketball this year. We'll never know how much those guys would have changed things. But again, we'll also never know how much the Timberwolves having Ant and Dante and Ayo for this game would have changed things. So there's no excuses for Denver whatsoever. This is terrible. It's atrocious. It's just a question of how strongly are they going to react to it and how are they going to proceed from here. But it's a terribly dark moment for Jokic, for Murray, and for the entire organization. Let's move on, Logan. I'm sure we'll circle back to this at the end because we'll get some super chats. But let's talk about another series that wrapped up. The New York Knicks did absolutely obliterate the Atlanta Hawks. We can keep this one quick before we get to the series that is going 7, which was a really fun game to watch today. But the Knicks had the biggest halftime lead in NBA playoff history today. They were up 47 points at the half. What do you have to say about the way they finished this series?
That was the biggest wet fart of a performance I've ever seen from a team in my life, from the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, it's got to be up there.
I stopped watching after halftime. I can't lie.
Of course. Of course. It was a 47-point game.
Dude, I mean, this was the absolute bottom for Atlanta. Like, Atlanta, I think, had kind of outproduced their means, in some ways with shooting and with McCollum and stuff. And then this was the absolute bottom for this team. The Knicks went on a freaking 51-8 run, dude. And it's weird. Because at the start of this game, the Hawks got out to this 9-0 run. I'm like, uh-oh, here we go. Atlanta's getting out in transition. They're getting some stops. And then they just completely fell apart. I mean, to me, the most impressed I was with any aspect in this game was just the Knicks defense. And I thought my conclusion was going to be, I've been moved by the Knicks defense. No, I haven't. I still think against really great teams, they're going to be able to push certain buttons. But I thought the adjustments that the Knicks made during this series and just the intensity and the effort they played with, I was really impressed by. The first guy, Karl Anthony Towns, has protected the rim and played so hard in this series. Comparative to my expectations, I'm just so impressed with where he's been at as a defender in this series. And then the Knicks MVP and I think best player in this series was OG Anunoby, start to finish. This game was absolutely immaculate. He's so disruptive defensively and so versatile and across so many different matchups. But he's really been on as a jump shooter. And my favorite thing about OG is how smart he is. OG takes such smart shots and is so deliberate about his game. Like, who was I? Actually, I was watching it was this game earlier. Jalen Johnson had a possession where he attacked Jalen Brunson on a mismatch. And I went, man, Jalen, that's what you need to do. And the next possession, he came down, he took the exact same shot, but in isolation on OG Anunoby. And I just went, no, I mean, that's just not smart. Like, you're
not the shot. Yeah.
You need to weaponize your physical advantages. And I thought OG throughout this series and in this game just picks his spots really well, is a really good decision maker, and knows when to attack. And he did a really good job in that regard. But yeah, man, Atlanta's going to have to I would fire Quinn Snyder. This is his going out as sorry and as sad as I've ever seen a team go out. I put that at the coach, actually. I don't care what kind of talent disadvantage you are. The performance from Atlanta today was unacceptable. And then that fucking brawl, man. Fuck Dyson Daniels. That's my conclusion on that, man.
Yeah.
The
Hawks just needed a little juice. They were down 50. They needed something to get them back in the game.
That was hilarious, bro. Like, that is complete frustration, and it's so
kind of gets scary when you're up 50 on a team because the wheels are coming off and they might just start fucking trying to hit you.
Also, bro, the shit that went down during that, I've never, bro. Mike Brown almost got trampled. They almost killed Mike Brown, bro. He locked in. Mike Brown
Yeah.
comes shooting out of a cannon off the screen in front of Mitchell Robinson, trips and falls, and the whole time is just screaming, "Stop!" Like, just please don't do that. This isn't you, Mitchell. This isn't you.
Culture setter. Shout
Shut
out
up,
Mike.
Mike Brown. I thought Mike, the ref, and I thought Onyeka Okongwu looked great after that, and I thought Dyson and Mitch both rightfully got ejected. Dyson for just, I don't know, being kind of dirty and just being a little gnat, a little instigator. And then Mitchell Robinson, it's like, bro, just stop chasing. Like, they had de-escalated the whole situation, and then Mitchell Robinson was like, nah, I need to go in for some more. That's one of the stupidest NBA fights I've ever seen.
Yeah, you're going to get more fight analysis than game analysis out of this one.
That was the only entertaining part of this game.
It was. Yeah, this was a hell of a finish to the series by the Knicks, and I just want to give them credit because they were down 2-1, and I was like, I think they're still going to win in 7 as I predicted, but I did think that they were in danger of possibly being upset, and I thought certainly the pressure was on, and a bit of a scare had been put into them at the least, and then from that point forward, they rattle off 16, 29, and 51-point victories. And they just figured everything out in this matchup, like literally every key component. They won the turnover battle. They won the transition battle. They dominated both those categories tonight. I think they were plus 16 in points off turnovers, and they were like plus 30 in transition points against Atlanta. And what Atlanta does is they get out in transition. So if you do that to them, you're going to beat them by 50. And the Atlanta offense was just a disaster because the Knicks figured out how to limit CJ's volume. They figured out how to hide Brunson on defense. And they won the three-point shooting battle. Brunson started playing better offensively. It was truly like the floodgates just opened. I mean, even McCall got fired today. And with the way he was playing this series, if he goes 10 of 12 from the field, you know that it's just the Knicks' day, and it is not at all the Hawks' day. But this was a clear developing trend. I think it said a lot about the Hawks' major flaws as not being a legit team that's capable of winning a playoff series, really. And most of it is about just how egregious their half-court offense was for most of this series and the lack of ball handling and shooting they have around CJ. And I mean, God bless what CJ did in games 2 and 3. I'll never forget it. It was electric. But was that going to be sustainable over a 7-game series, especially once the Knicks are like, oh, we can just stop letting him get the Brunson switch, and we can show or we can blitz and we can force the ball out of CJ's hands. And also CJ isn't going to be able to keep making all these tough shots. It got pretty easy for New York. But also shout out to OG and Cat for being awesome this entire series. OG averaged 21.5 points and 9 rebounds on 75% true shooting with 3 stocks as the best defender in the series by far. In Cat, averaged 19, 11, and 6 on 74% true shooting with 3.5 stocks. It was the best passing series of his career. It was the most efficient series of his career, the most under control, and one of the best defensive series for sure. So I got to give him props because coming into these playoffs, I was feeling out on Cat as a playoff player. I was like, there's just too many big flaws with him. And he really limited all those flaws. He wasn't making mistakes. He wasn't playing out of control. He wasn't turning the ball over that much. And he wasn't a real liability defensively. So every matchup is different, obviously. The Hawks offense is very limited in terms of how they could attack Cat for sure. And they also didn't have good personnel to guard him. He was just constantly at an advantage in that matchup. But if those two keep playing like that, that is a huge deal for this Knicks team because Jalen Brunson was the 3rd best Knick in this series. I mean, it was OG and it was Cat. Brunson was amazing in game 5. That was really his only game in this series. And he had the first quarter of game 1 and he was getting it going in this one. But I mean, this is the OG game. So it was really those two playing some of the best playoff basketball they have. I'm a huge believer in OG. I don't know about this level of offensive volume and this level of hot shooting going forward. And Cat, I was impressed by, but again, we'll see how he handles a more challenging matchup next round. Ultimately, I think the Hawks just were not on their level as a basketball team. And it's great for New York to finish this strong and bring all this momentum into next round as everyone else is struggling. Detroit is fighting to get to a game 7. Boston is going to have to play in a game 7. Like there was a second where the Knicks were the team that was in trouble and now
have some time to rest.
We'll have a little bit of time to rest. And so all of that is good, but I do think this said a lot about the Hawks' massive flaws. I mean, they averaged 0.87 points per half court
Who
possession in this series. That's very, very bad.
Damn, I guess his answer is kind of simple. I was going to ask, who would you least rather have, Dyson Daniels or Christian Brown? I think I'd probably still rather not have Christian Brown.
You would rather not have Christian Brown.
I think I would rather have Dyson, but only because, I mean, it's kind of a shit off, but
I would rather have Christian.
really?
I'll be honest. He's at least a significantly better finisher, and he is at least capable of making threes off the catch sometimes.
Yeah.
I thought Dyson had one of the worst offensive series I've ever seen from a basketball player.
It
And
was
I
ugly.
thought him being that bad offensively and the lack of the Hawks' depth was a big thing that killed them. The fact that they didn't have anybody to turn to after Kuminga was just bad. I mean, he was bad in 4 out of 6 games in the series. He was really good in 2 of them and bad in all the others, which is unfortunately the Jonathan Kuminga story. Like, everybody wants to get really excited when he has 2 good games in year 5 and say, that's the future all-star. Like, he's put it all together. And then unfortunately, every single time he has a little stretch like that, he comes right back down to earth. And you're like, ooh, he's not playing focused. He's not engaged defensively. He's taking really bad shots offensively. He's not a good jump shooter. He's got tunnel vision, and I felt that was the Kuminga experience in this series too.
He can have good games. I mean, I'm hopeful that Kuminga can still have a role on this team and play well if they bring him back next year. I do think number one for the Hawks is moving off of Dyson, and I actually think there might be a team. And I was thinking about it earlier today, Carson, where it is a bad contract, I think, in a vacuum, and I think it's just a bad contract, period, because of what a liability he is offensively. Yeah. I do think he looks worse in this situation because Atlanta is so starved for half-court offense. I'm not saying that he's not going to present similar challenges in another offense, but and it still sucks you're paying him $25 million because the reality is I think he could be an impactful player with a team that has where he's in more of that specialist role. Again, the issue is you're paying a specialist $25 million. You want to be paying him more like, 10, but
yeah, it's hard, man. He's almost Vando level offensively. It's like, I think any lineup you plug Dyson Daniels into, he makes significantly worse offensively in the playoffs. Like when teams are fully keyed in on exploiting him as a glaring weakness. Again, I mean, they had Cat on him early and Cat was effective roaming off of him, ignoring him. And then they hit Brunson on him. And now they were like, we can blitz every ball screen they try to bring Brunson into because we leave Dyson off the roll. And he can't do anything. I mean, there was a play today where off the roll, he just like throws the ball away. He can't finish.
My favorite.
Little push shots aren't reliable enough. And then every single possession, when he's on the perimeter, you just ignore him. And you say, I dare you to give the ball to Dyson Daniels. And I dare him to shoot. And he's 19% from 3. Every single possession, he's fucking up your spacing. And he's not an initiator. So like, there's really no way to figure out how do we get some value out of him offensively. He's not going to have those cutting opportunities against playoff defenses that are going to pack the paint more. Like, I just don't see how he can be productive in any serious situation.
There was this one possession too where he was driving in transition and it just did a pound dribble with his same hand like 3 times in a row, and then Brunson stripped him, and I'm like, damn, bro, no
that
move,
was terrible.
No bag, no gather, just dribble into Brunson and
dude
get the ball stripped.
7 points per game on 50% true shooting in 28 minutes in this series does not even begin to tell the story of how bad he was offensively. He does make solid decisions as a passer, but again, when you're a total non-threat as a scorer, you can only do so much there. And he's a pretty good offensive rebounding guard. And those are the points that I give to him.
We've said all this, and I've brought him up just to say, I think Atlanta's first job this offseason, like the Nuggets shopping Brown, should be to try to trade Dyson Daniels because of, and I get it, man, all defense caliber guy, one of the best defensive guards in basketball. That's my
Logan, it's
point.
Like,
and that's
to put it in terms that you would understand, it's like $25 million a year. Okay, let's say you spend that on the wrong gooning site. You wanted to spend it on a nicer gooning site. That's money that now you can't go spend on that better gooning site, right? That's essentially what the Hawks have done with Dyson Daniels, but it's even worse for them because theoretically you could go and spend another $25 million and you could just subscribe to both gooning sites. They actually have something called a salary cap, which limits how much money they can spend in total. So they can only allocate so much. So they've essentially wasted $25 million on like the worst gooning site there is that you can't even really goon to. That's sort of the analogy. Does that make sense to you? I mean, are you understanding now?
No,
Okay.
Oh, hold up. I got a better one.
Yeah.
It's like if you spent $25 million on some boof gas. You know, your boy said,
There
"Dude,
you
I've got
go.
some." He goes, "I got some quality loud, some quality dank. It's
And it's
stinks.
arugula.
It's exotic." And then I get it, and I go, "I'm not even high."
Right.
And yeah,
Because
that's
it's
not right.
hay.
So I think,
Mm-hmm.
in conclusion, yeah, you got to get off the boof weed. And in conclusion, I think Dyson Daniels is kind of some boof gas. And
He is.
I actually do, though. One, I think that a team would still find him. I think in another role, he has a valuable skill set. And like, again, I think he has these same drawbacks in the playoffs. I think you could convince a team that is desperate for that kind of perimeter defense to buy in on him. You might have to attach another player. You might have to attach another pick, but I do think that with what he does provide, even though he has all these drawbacks, I think you could get a team to buy into him. And for the Hawks, they literally just need that flexibility, like we're saying. They can't go out
Mm-hmm.
there and get other more offensively skilled guys because they're already paying guys that have really major limitations and redundancies. And it's crazy, right? Because against bad offenses, Atlanta can dog walk you. They're going to out athletic you at the point of attack. They're going to get out in transition. They're going to score easy buckets, and they're going to punch you in the mouth. That's not going to happen in the playoffs. The other thing they need to do, and they mentioned this at the tail end of the broadcast, I love Onyeka. They need an actual center that can protect the rim with some real size. And I don't know if that more so looks like moving Onyeka to the 4 spot, if you move him back into a backup role, what that looks like.
They need a bench. They need another look at almost every position, and they just don't have it.
And I think they need a starting big man. If somehow, some way, I think this is kind of not even feasible, so I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but I would like if they could get a guy like Mara out of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I think he'd be like, literally they just need a giant human being on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
They're a really small team, but this was no bullshit. This was the worst playoff game I've ever seen from a basketball team. This is the absolute worst performance I have ever seen from any basketball team I've watched in the playoffs.
It was really, really terrible. The Hawks are going to have 2 first-round picks this year, and one of those is probably going to be a top 10 pick. It's a lottery pick from Pelicans, so that's going to be interesting. They're going to have a couple opportunities to add some more talent.
I forgot they made that move, the Newell
Shout out to Joe
trade.
Dumars. Shout out to Joe Dumars. You can never forget about it. So that's an opportunity. And I also think the fact that they only owe Jalen Johnson and Nickeil Alexander-Walker $44 million combined for the next couple years. That's great. They have those guys on really good contracts. That being said, those guys do need to get better. And I think we very much saw that in this series where they both really struggled in terms of half-court offense because outside of CJ, there just wasn't a high-level ball handler or creator on the court for Atlanta. And Jalen Johnson, it's exactly what I talked about all year. It was probably an even bigger deal than I thought. The handle just has to get better. The ball handling has to get better. The over-the-top shot making has to get better too. I mean, those little short jumpers and stuff he has to be more consistent with, but also he doesn't have a functional, good enough handle to really navigate traffic in terms of the half court. And so that's why he has to settle for more of those shots that he's ultimately not good at. So he is not somebody you can lean on as a playoff offense number one at all at this point. And then Nas inside the arc scoring was a disaster. You know, caught fire from 3 down the stretch this year and still shot the 3 reasonably well in this series. But inside the arc, he shot like 30%. So those two just were not involved at the level that you would need, you would like to see. And I think it just reveals the reality, and it's not a surprising one, but it made it very clear in this series how much they need a lead offensive playmaker creator alongside those two guys. And maybe that's bringing back CJ on a short-term extension. I would be interested to see, though, if, for example, things go very badly with Cleveland, and if Donovan Mitchell says, I'm done, or alternately, if James Harden says, I'm done, that's just a spot I'm looking at. And I'm like, if you can pry away one of those guards, like a legit offensive number one creator, I think that'd be very interesting for Atlanta. I think once they check that box, they
James Harden in Atlanta, all the strip clubs are going to make bank.
Now that I think about it, he never played games. So let's target Donovan Mitchell. He's a much better fit with our timeline anyways. Much better fit. And I would like to see them be aggressive.
Make the city lit, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, dude. Like, I just think you need to try to really level up because we more or less know how this story ends. It's going to be the same thing last year. CJ isn't good enough, shocker, at 34 years old to be the primary ball handler for a good playoff offense. And they don't have enough shooting and they don't have enough ball handling around him. So if you get a Donovan Mitchell, that really changes things here. And again, I mean, that's just a pipe dream at this point. We'll see what happens. We'll see who becomes available. But Atlanta does have a lot of mid-sized contracts that you can pair to make a trade for a big contract. I mean, Dyson is $25 million. Kuminga is on a $23 million team option. Personally, I would decline that. I wouldn't want to pay him that much next year. I doubt they do that, though. They traded for him. They're probably going to opt into that. But then it's like Kispert and Risashe and Buddy Hield are on like the 10 to 15 million range. So if you can, go take a big swing because those guys just are not delivering you really any value. I mean, again, they're paying these dudes 10, 15 million, and they're also paying Dyson and Kuminga 20 million plus. None of those guys are delivering their value. You're paying like kind of big bench contracts when you have the worst bench in the playoffs. Like that just needs to be upgraded because you can't be shelling out tens of millions of dollars to dudes who are unplayable in the playoffs, like Buddy and Kispert and Risashe. So I do think the Hawks are pretty far away. I know they went 20-5 for a stretch towards the end of the regular season, but I don't think that Jalen Johnson is at the level that he needs to be at for this team to be a serious playoff threat. I don't think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is there. I think they both had really good seasons, but they are still another step in the progression away. And I don't know how confident I am about them both taking that next leap. Jalen has constantly gotten better, so you give him credit for that. But the handle, I mean, it's always been the thing I think that has limited his ceiling up to this point, and that's going to remain the case and until he figures it out. But he's 6'9". Like, it's not easy. It's not easy to try to be doing the point forward thing in the half court that he's trying to do, but he's not a good enough off-ball player to be really slotted into a complementary role like that and be super effective. He's not a reliable enough catch and shooter. We haven't really seen him buy in as like a cutter roll man. I would love to see him be more willing to do that stuff. He's done it in small doses, but as a ball handler, as a primary ball handler in the half court, he's not up to snuff in the playoffs.
I mean, what's the alternative if you don't go all in and get that kind of game? I mean, there's a hard ceiling on this team.
Yeah, run it back and win 46 games, something like that, and lose in the first round.
I think they're kind of doomed to do the same thing over again. But I mean, if you think about where this team was at the beginning of the year, though, I do think they're in a better spot. Moving off of Trey, moving off of KP, shuffling around the pieces they did. And so I say that just to make the point that I wouldn't put it past Atlanta to not make a big move because
I don't expect them to.
They are not scared to pull the trigger.
Oh, you're saying you think they might make a big move?
Well, yeah, I think that would be cool. I don't. They're random enough to where I don't know. Like I didn't even with Trey's struggles, I didn't really see that one on the table. Like it's not out of the realm of possibility that Atlanta pulls a rabbit out of their hat and makes something big time happen. But I do like the foundation they've set, at least with a guy like Jalen Johnson on a good contract, the young, impactful players they do have. But I agree with you. I think there is some pretty drastic retooling that this team needs to do to elevate themselves. They're kind of stuck in, I won't say no man's land, but they're in the middle of the East for sure and firmly there.
Yeah, definitely. Jalen Johnson in this series minus like 3 points per game from the regular season, like 3 assists per game. He was not as impactful as a playmaker and down to 55% true shooting. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 14 points per game on 53% true shooting. The 3-point shooting as a team overall, just not good enough. So I think they're going to have to address offensive skill on this roster for sure and the bench. And I agree with you in terms of needing another look at center. I thought Onyeka was good, but they need a big physical ass-kicking center they can turn to. So there's a lot of needs on this roster. And whether they try to make a big move or if they can just move off of some of these shitty players on mid-sized contracts for better role players on mid-sized contracts, that's another path to them getting better. I don't think it addresses the core issue, but it would definitely be a positive. And they're going to need some positives in this offseason after just a brutal, brutal result to end the season. But like you said, an encouraging season overall. I mean, a couple dudes in the most improved conversation. You make the playoffs, you win a couple games. Like, it's good big picture it was just a really ugly finish that exposed everything this team does still need to figure out. Logan, the Boston Celtics are going to have to figure something out, and they're going to have to figure something out fast because they have gone very quickly from cushy up 3-1, going back home to Boston, to now headed to a game 7 against the Philadelphia 76ers. How has Philly gotten this thing turned around?
To me, in this game, it was the stretch from the second quarter to the third quarter, but specifically Philadelphia's defense has really brought it to Boston, I thought, and especially in this game, and them turning that defense into offense too. But that quarter, that stretch from the second quarter to the third quarter, I mentioned, they outscore Boston 62-40, and they hold Boston to 15 of 42 from the field, 5 of 21 from deep, and they forced 7 turnovers. A hallmark of all Boston Celtics losses, they shoot 29% from deep, 12 of 41, and especially early on in this game, Boston is such a momentum and rhythm team, and it feels like a lot of games when guys are knocking down shots and taking early stuff and knocking it down early, that they're going to get it going. Very frustrating early on in this game. Derek White smoked 2 point-blank shots. He finally made some threes in this game, but he smoked a pair of layups. Jason Tatum smoked a layup early. They were missing some threes. This was kind of just the classic sloppy offensive Boston game that unfortunately we've kind of become accustomed to with them. And then you got elite performances out of the likes of Tyrese Maxey and Paul George. And Maxey is just one of the hardest covers in basketball. His ability to accelerate and decelerate so quickly is such a weapon. It just makes him such a tough cover, even with really good Boston personnel. And he's such a elite, difficult off the dribble shot maker. Like, it's insane, man. He gives you 30, 2 and 5 on 11 of 22 from the field, 3 of 5 from deep with 0. Shout out Gilbert Arenas turnovers, man. Maxey's also really elite at doing that, not turning the rock over. Paul George was awesome in this game. Like, he's been awesome in this series as a difficult shot maker and as a playmaker.
As a defender.
Yeah, true. These last 2 games, he's been an elite as a defender. And then, Embiid was good. I won't call Embiid great, but I thought he play-made really well. He knocked down some shots later in this game. Little whiny and complainy for me early on in this game, but it got a little better. He does that sometimes. He plays a little soft, but Philly's no joke, man. And I know you've been banging the drum for Philly all year long when this team is fully healthy, with Joel Embiid healthy. And we've seen it a couple of times now where if Philly doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, they have the talent on this roster to go toe-to-toe with Boston and outplay them, especially when you get a couple of really down games from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, which Philadelphia has induced them into these last 2. So shout out, man. I'm really impressed with Philly. I'm really impressed with the defense. And on offense, Maxey and PG just serving it up to this Boston defense, man. I'm disappointed in the Jays, but I am really impressed with Philadelphia, man, especially to push this 7.
Totally, dude. And like you said, I have been beating the drum for Philly all year, but I've also been beating the drum for Boston all year, even harder. And I also did not think that Philly had a chance in this series. So this has been as wild to me as any outcome. I'm going to be real. Like, again, I thought Denver was probably going to come back from down 3-1, and they lost. And I picked them to win the series beforehand, and they lost the series. It's been mayhem all around. I certainly didn't think Detroit was going to go down 3-1. I didn't think the Rockets were going to go down 3-0. Like, this has been the hardest first round to get a read on of my freaking life. So mayhem all around. But the one thing that you can get a read on is that the Sixers have been really impressive over these last 2 games. And it is great to see, as somebody who has been an advocate for this team all year. And whenever you advocate for the Sixers, people, and when I say people, I mean you, Logan, you and many others, they look at you like you're mentally deranged. They look at you like you have some sort of illness, like you have some sort of schizophrenic hallucinations, like, oh, Philly, oh, is this going to be the year that they're healthy, buddy? Is this going to be the year they have a good playoff series? And you're like, yeah, I hope so. I think so, maybe. And guess what? They've taken the Boston Celtics to 7. Now, again, I mean, I've been super pro Celtics, so there's some conflicts there, but doesn't change the reality that the last two games, they have just straight up looked like the better team. And it all starts with their defense. They have been defending Tatum and Brown phenomenally. They have been containing the ball so well. And that's where you credit just the really good group of wings that they have, which I have been high on all year. Like, PG is balling the hell out, but it's also Oubre and it's also Grimes. Like, generally, they just have a very good core of defensive wings who can take on that matchup.
I just want to shout out Embiid for being super mobile and active and just like not being stuck in the mud in this series. He's getting into action.
But also, I mean, his size as a deterrent has been a factor, and they are just conceding pull-up jumpers to these dudes out of pick and roll. Like, he's sitting in a deep drop and they are inviting it. Hey, Jason, you want to take that pull-up three? Jalen, you want to take that pull-up three? Be my guest. And those guys just can't hit those shots. I mean, they're 13 of 44 on jumpers over the last two games. Tatum and Brown are combined. So really all of Boston's problems start there with the fact that those guys are taking a ton of off the dribble jumpers and they aren't making those jumpers, because that means that they are not physically imposing themselves on the game. They are not putting the defense in rotation. This is as Boston is running pretty much everything through those two, and they just haven't been able to get much going. So yeah, when you're not drawing that help, you're not creating open catch and shoot threes for your teammates, and you're missing all the tough jumpers you're taking, that's when they get the worst version of the Boston offense. And this is a tendency we have seen from them time and again over the years. And Logan, I thought optimistically that this time around they were going to be a little more mature. I thought there were more layers to this offense. And in the regular season, there absolutely were. And they've just kind of abandoned that stuff. And they've reverted to Tatum, Brown, isolate the matchup, take the pull-up jumpers, and they haven't been good enough at that. And then also, it's not helping that when Boston does get open catch and shoot looks, they're missing those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Pritchard and Hauser shot like shit in this game.
Yeah.
And cold shooting is always a staple of Boston. But yeah, man, I mean, over these last two games, 20 points per game. That's each of them. They're both individually averaging 20, but together, 30 of 72 from the Jays over these last two games, under 42% from the field, 9 of 28 from deep, 32% from deep. And they've both they've given you a total of 15 turnovers over these last two games. I mean, it's
the Jays aren't hitting their Jays.
It's just not good enough. And when Philly's potent, man, especially with Embiid out there, like they have got the firepower to match Boston.
Yeah. Well, dude, you mentioned the turnover number. I think just as significant is how much the playmaking has been kept in check. They combined for 5 assists.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They have more turnovers than assists over the last 2 games. And Tatum, who's been at such a high level as a playmaker, just hasn't really had the opportunities because, again, he's not really creating advantages. They're saying, go ahead, take these pull-up jumpers, and he's missing the pull-up jumper. So it just leads to these like very ugly stretches of offense, like when they missed 15 straight shots or whatever it was in game 5. And I mean, there was a similar lull in this one. There were several of them, but you look at the third quarter when it was like they were doing a good job defensively on Philly and they just couldn't really cut into the lead at all because their offense was super stagnant. They were just missing a ton of threes. So it's really a combination of Philly's defense stepping up, making some good adjustments, and just defending at a high level. And then Boston's offense disappointing and falling into some of the worst tendencies of old that have been totally present over these last 2 games. And I do think it's very different than game 2. I will continue to make that distinction because game 2, they lost because they were very cold from 3, but I thought they were getting to good shots. They weren't taking a ton of off the dribble jumpers. They were creating open catch and shoot 3 looks. And sometimes Hauser's going to miss those and Derek White's going to miss those. And you live with that. These last 2 games have been very different. These have been the exact sort of jumpers that you want Boston living off of, especially when the Jays go cold. So Philly, they have really done a nice job. And then just to shout out some of the individuals, Paul George, like you said, what a game and what a series. His shot making was unreal tonight, just shooting over dudes, but his playmaking, his defense, I mean, he's been good on both Tatum and Brown, and his efficiency, 18, 4, and 3 in the series on 63% true shooting. What a story, like what a level he's been at since coming back from the suspension. I love to see it because I've always been a PG guy. He gets slandered a lot. He gets clowned on. He does it to himself somewhat, but I have always thought he is such an impactful player and like such a well-built all-around wing to be like a number 2 on some awesome teams in the NBA. And unfortunately, last year he just fell off a cliff with Philly and he was injured and whatnot. But I'm not going to say he's looked like Clippers Paul George since coming back from the suspension, but it's certainly the best that he's looked in Philly. So that's really been great to see. And he's been one of the best players in this series. And then Maxey, like you said, just looked unguardable in this one. And it's pretty simple. Like the combination of insane speed, elite change of pace, great pull-up shooting, great ball handling, the intermediate floater game he has. Like as a scorer, he really has it all. And it's not that everything is always going all the time, right? Sometimes he's inconsistent as a three-point shooter. Some of the floaters he takes are tough shots. He, as a small guard, is not an elite finisher around the basket, but he can get to these shots so consistently. And so when he's on, there's really nothing that you can do. And he's on a lot. He's not the most efficient player, but he's always going to get his volume, and he was very efficient in this one. And I got to say, he just has the Celtics in a bind out of pick and roll. Like he is averaging 13 points per game just out of pick and roll in this series.
Can't give him any space, and he's so quick. It's so hard not to concede. Like he needs
100%.
He needs a little bit of space, and he needs a second of time. And if he gets that little sliver, it's wraps.
Dude, it's like every time they have come out even the tiniest bit too high, the big, he's just burning them downhill, and he's getting to the rim. So it's like the best shots that you can concede are open floaters and mid-range pull-ups for Maxey. Like, I'm still comfortable with those shots if I'm Maxey. So I do think we've seen the rigidity of the bigs defensively for Boston. That's actually my biggest concern about them as a team when I look to the big picture, more so even than some of this offensive stuff. I do not like that situation. I really do not like Vooch defensive minutes, because then it's like you have a big who can only play drop, but also brings you no rim protection. But overall, I think the big situation has been disappointing in this series for Boston.
I wrote this down, stat down earlier. I meant to mention it when you were bringing up that cold stretch. Yeah, Boston was scoreless for over 4 minutes and 15 seconds in the third quarter. Completely sunk them in this game.
Totally. And part of it, which is obvious, as you've said, is just the shooting variance of it, because there is an element of process. There's also an element of sometimes shots go in and sometimes shots don't. And in their 3 wins, Boston shoots 42% from 3 and they make 23s a game. And in their 3 losses, they shoot 28% from 3 and they make 12 a game. So it's not exactly rocket science on that front. This is always the case with the Celtics, but I do think, although generally, I think their three-point shooting is a superpower because they have so many dudes who are high-level shooters and they can create those shots with such volume. It allows them to pull away from teams in a big way. One thing that I do think is a legitimate downside of their three-point shooting reliance is in the playoffs, you're not playing for point differential. You're not playing for net rating. You're not playing for who is the better team in the sense that they can open up a massive lead on you, right? And over an 82-game season, that's going to average out to them being the way better team. You're playing to win every individual game. And it doesn't matter if you win by 30 or you lose by 1. A win is a win and a loss is a loss. So the Celtics, they may have 2 30-plus point wins in this series, but they've lost the closer games. And it's mostly been because their three-point shooting has gone really cold. So that has been the biggest issue for them. And you do feel as a team the ways in which they can get into these lulls, because they don't get out in transition much and they rarely get to the free throw line. In fact, they got to the line less than any other team in the NBA this season. And sometimes, I mean, they really aren't generating many paint touches. Sometimes their offense is not just ending in three-point shots. The ball is mostly staying on the perimeter outside the three-point line. And so that does mean you're so reliant on that shot making, you're not getting some of the easy stuff elsewhere. And then if they don't dominate the offensive glass, which they usually do, but they didn't do tonight, and then if they have just a couple too many turnovers, they're usually like the best team in the NBA protecting the ball, but they had too many turnovers, especially in the first half tonight. The offense can look bad, especially for an offense that was second in the regular season in offensive rating. And I thought they were pretty much juiceless offensively in this one. The best players weren't good enough. The spot-up shooters weren't good enough. And again, they didn't turn to more of Pritchard and White running the offense. They didn't turn to more looks to get Brown and Tatum going off ball. They weren't running a lot of the fluid handoffs. Like, it was very stagnant, ugly, kind of worst case scenario Celtics offense.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Pritchard, dude. Pritchard's been huge in every single win in this series for Boston. And, I mean, he's kind of a bit of a mismatch in this series. And like you're mentioning too, dude, Philly can match all the physicality because they've got such a good wing and athletic depth down this roster. Like, it's not like Tatum and Brown most times when they're getting to these pull-up looks or, they're easy mismatches.
No,
They can match length and in
totally.
the physicality of it all. And it just doesn't it's so many games when Boston bludgeons teams, it just comes so easy. And Philly has really met that battle in
Yeah.
making them just work. And that's what you got to do in the playoffs, man. You're going to be playing great basketball teams. You can be playing great individual players. And step number one in all of these different matchups is you could throw your hands up and you could say, oh, we're cooked. Or you make life hard on them. And that's what Philly's done. And now, do or die, man. Anything can happen. 50-50. It's a game 7, dude. Best
100%.
2 words in sports. I'm excited for this one, man. Not only because I think it's really competitive. We got a healthy Joel Embiid. Knock on wood. I don't want to do it to you, please, basketball gods.
Hey, they already took his appendix.
We can hold
they can't
some hands.
take it again.
Please don't do it. Okay.
Please protect Joel from Logan's dark magic and dark forces. Please do not let him reverse curse Joel with his dark intentions.
So I'm excited for the matchup, but also this is real beef, man. This is Philly, Boston. These two cities hate each other. These two teams hate each other. And it doesn't get better than this, man.
Yeah, dude, it is real beef. We've got a lot of real beef in the first round. It's fun. I got a lot of respect for the Philly fans chanting, "We want Boston again." I was like, hell yeah. Could have gone for a Sixers and 7 too. Either one would have worked for me, but you kind of got to pick, and "We want Boston" was their thing before the series, so I got a lot of respect for that. But yeah, I thought Boston did a better job on Embiid. They got him into an off shooting night. They got him to take 5 threes, which to me is a win because he hasn't really found the 3 ball this year or last year, and especially not in this series. So when he's so dominant working out of the post and inside the arc, it's like if you get him to take 5 threes and he goes 1 of 5, that's good. And obviously they did a lot more doubling in this game, which was what I was expecting and thought was the obvious adjustment after he just fried their bigs in single coverage in game 5. But he was good as a passer versus the doubles. I mean, 8 assists to 1 turnover, had a sexy behind the back feed to Oubre, who made a couple of great cuts off the doubles. PG had another nice cut off the double. He had a nice find to VJ, basically for the dagger in this game. I mean, it was probably already over, but he was really good. And I think that's probably the biggest improvement that Embiid has made as a player, just the passing improvement. So he did his job in that way. And Philly's whole starting 5 was really good. I mean, Oubre, I think, has had a very nice series where he's been effective attacking closeouts, good in transition as a driver, good cutting in this game, big on the offensive glass, good defensively. And then VJ gave you 14, 8, and 3 and made a couple great defensive plays. He's still being tested as a jump shooter. And I think that's the right thing to do if you're Boston defensively, dare him to take some of those shots. But overall, I thought top to bottom, Philly was better today. And it just feels like they're gelling better right now. And I like the looks they're getting to more. Their best guys are playing better. Like these haven't been back-to-back fluke, just shooting variants. Write it off because Boston didn't shoot as well as they usually done from 3. It's like Philly has outplayed them for sure. Now we look to game 7 though, Logan. And what are you expecting? Will Philly outplay them again, or will Boston get back on track? And what has to happen for either of these teams to get it done?
I'm going to take Boston. I mean, I think Boston's process just needs to be better. I think they're the better team. Also, I mean, Boston is at home. That does matter a little bit to me. In a
Philly's
game
won
7.
twice in Boston, but I agree.
That's fair. I expect more out of Tatum and Brown. I think. I mean, look, they've both had a really below their standard last 2 games, but I think they get back on track. I do think the Celtics, when they're struggling, need to turn to Pritchard more because he has been so rock solid in this series and so good at just generating offense when they're going through these lulls. And honestly, a big thing when I'm struggling, if I thought it was close to like a 50-50 between these teams, the deciding factor for me are going to be just the effort and little possession battle, I think is what I'm going to lean on. As much as Derek White has struggled to put the ball in the basket, he is an extra possession generator, in terms of defense and rebounds. They've been great on the glass.
Yeah.
One, I think Boston is the more talented team. I think their offense is a little bit better, but The possession battle is what I'm going to lean on. Boston's been really good at doing that all year long, and that's what I'm going to bank on.
I think it's a great point, dude. It was a huge story throughout the playoffs last year. It's been a huge story in the playoffs this year. Win the possession game, you give yourself a good chance to win the basketball game. Minnesota sure as hell proved that tonight. And I do believe that Boston is the better bet to win the possession game for sure, probably both in terms of turnover margin and the offensive rebounds. And that's a big component. And then I just have to believe that Tatum and Brown are going to play better than this. And I have to believe that Boston is going to shoot better, even though I can say back-to-back games, they've had these issues. Like, ultimately, these are two of the best players on the floor. These are two top 15 level players. Like, they need to be more physically imposing. They need to be less willing to settle. And they also just have to make some shots that they've been missing. And dudes off the catch have to make shots. Hauser hasn't been good enough. White finally made a few today. What's up, LC the Kid? You look stunned over there.
You want to hear a crazy stat?
Yeah, absolutely I do. I love that sort of thing.
The Timberwolves winning this game against Denver. They're the first team in NBA history to win a playoff game while missing 3 or more players who averaged 10 or more points per game in that series.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Nuts. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Holy shit, Denver. We'll get back to them.
Not a series, a game.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable, man. Anyways, I do think that Boston is going to go back, and I do think that they're going to win, because really, if they clean up their offense, like, that's been the problem. Philly's offense hasn't even been that great in their wins. Like today, Philly's offense wasn't that great. It's Boston's been scoring in the 90s in the games that they lose. And so I think if their best players play better and if they shoot better from beyond the arc, which I do think they are very much due to do, I think Boston does have more firepower as a team, and I am going to take them to win. But this is a hell of a series that we're getting to see, and I'm very happy that Joel Embiid is having, I mean, not just a moment like this. He's going to play 4 games at least in these playoffs. After game 5, I was like, woohoo, Embiid had a great game. And then Philly won game 6. And can I tell you something, Logan? I think they probably have their eyes on winning game 7. I think they want to. I don't think they're going to do it, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's their goal as a team. And Joe Mazzulla said 10 minutes left in this game, fuck the starters, you're done. And he kind of does that a lot. He kind of yanks the starters early a lot.
You know, to be fair, they did go on an 11-0 run with the starters off the court.
They did. So. And I was looking at this and I'm like, do I like Luka Garza more than Vooch?
Bro.
Because Luka Garza has been spraying that shit from 3 all year, and he is at least bigger than Vooch. He's at least a massive human being. I was like, I don't know. I have not liked the Vooch minutes very much in this series. He's better. He is. But, man, Boston's three-point shooting has been frustrating, and Luka comes in and he just bangs one immediately, and he has been doing that all freaking year. All right, let's get to these super chats. We've got a lot of them, of course, on a night like this. Nathan says, bro, why the fuck is Brown in this game at all? Brother, your guess is as good as mine. Well, they don't have a lot of dudes.
Yeah, it's still a valid and great question. Next season, we could be asking, bro, why the fuck is Brown on this roster at all? Hopefully we won't.
Absolutely, absolutely. But truly, they just don't have many dudes to turn to, bro. You look at the bench minutes. THJ was good tonight. Tyus Jones plays 12 minutes. Bruce Brown plays 14 minutes. Other than that, it's 3 minutes of Zeke Naji and 4 minutes of Jonas Valanciunas. Valanciunas, man, I mean, just not being a playoff player at all is disappointing, because it's like, ooh, they have a backup center who can play 12, 15 minutes a game in the playoffs, and they cannot get eviscerated in the non-Jokic minutes. And Valanciunas just wasn't even that. So I don't know if he's even back on this roster next year. At some point, it would be nice if they got a backup center who could play in the playoffs, but I don't think that's even at the top of the needs for this Denver team right now. Gabriel says, a couple nights ago, Carsexy misread my donate as love you guys and wanted y'all to know that I do, just not in the homoerotic way y'all love each other. Thank God. I needed that, Gabriel. I needed that. And we don't expect you to love us in the way we love each other. It's a very unique thing between 2 adult men. Wouldn't you say, Logan?
But we love you too, Gabriel. Yeah,
we do love you, Gabriel. We love you very, very much. And we love you even more because you got a couple more chats here. Also, can we all finally agree that Gobert is a playoff riser? Conley also looked surprisingly great this series, better than last year even. Conley, I have to say, I cannot believe that he gave Minnesota solid minutes. I watched him this year and I said, that man is a walking corpse. I said, that is a man who shoots about 30% inside the arc. And everybody knows that his only 2 shots are an open catch and shoot 3 or a floater that he's not making. and he is just disintegrated into nothing, and he got cut by like the Bulls, right? And then he winds up back in Minnesota. And yeah, I mean, he had some playoff moments for them. He still makes good decisions. He can still compete defensively, and he made a couple shots. I did not see that coming. Gobert playoff riser. I'm with that agenda.
I always thought Gobert got a raw deal from that Clippers Jazz series.
The
where
rawest
they
deal
went
ever,
5 out,
bro.
and they had no perimeter defense whatsoever. And then, everybody said,
100%.
it's how you beat Gobert. And it's like, well, damn, man, he wouldn't have to be the entirety of the team's defense if they had competent defenders around him. So
Look,
for one of the greatest defenders in NBA history, that's not hyperbole, that is a fact. He is just somehow, some way had to work off of this reputation as a playoff dropper and as a loser that has never been accurate.
no, it hasn't. But like, look at what he's put together in Minnesota now when they actually have put some good point of attack defenders alongside him. Because I completely agree with you. 2021, I thought with that said was that his offense was the problem because he could not punish the Clippers for being able to go small ball 5 out. He couldn't beat them enough as an offensive rebounder. He obviously couldn't beat them as a post-up mismatch attacker. So he allowed them to play those looks because he wasn't just bullying them on the other end. Defensively, I think he was legitimately not at fault at all. Like, there is nobody who can fix that situation when you have 4 dudes around you who can't contain the ball and they have 5 dudes on the floor who can spray threes. Like, what is he supposed to do? He's supposed to stay home on shooters. Then everybody would be saying, oh my God, where's Gobert's rim protection? You can't have him doing everything on the court all at once. But now in Minnesota, 2024, phenomenal defensive series against the Suns, pivotal to them causing Jokic to have some trouble in that next series and getting to the Western Conference Finals. Last year, unbelievably good against the Lakers. That was an incredible defensive series. He was switching on to all of their offensive stars and doing a really good job guarding in space. He also had an unbelievable closeout performance in Game 5 of that series. And now he does this, and I called him the MVP of the series. I think he's the best player in the series overall. I don't think I can give Jokic that nod because in the games that really swung this series 2 through 4, I mean, Gobert outplayed him 1,000 times over. So I think Gobert was the best player in this series. And I'm with the Gobert playoff riser. He's at least a playoff maintainer.
I agree. I think he was the best player in this series.
Like, his offense has been a problem for sure in a number of playoff series in his career, but his defense has translated beautifully. And genuinely, yeah, in Minnesota, I think like this is one of the best 3-year postseason defensive runs we've ever seen from a player. And it's arguably not like his peak level defensively. It's just when he had the right team around him. It also arguably is his peak level defensively. I think he's gotten a little better guarding in space. And I think he just is more comfortable in the Jokic matchup now. I think he really has gotten used to some of his tendencies and did a nice job of taking away a lot of his favorite shots in this series. Gabriel also says Jamal is cursed, man. The one season he was an all-star and all-NBA, he chokes hard in the playoffs.
I don't think cursed. I just think he has real limitations, man.
Yeah, I agree.
And they can balance out over a long season with, bad defensive personnel matchups like that. And, he's a tough bucket, but this is the real test, man, when you're up against the best of the best and real deal NBA playoff defenses. And unfortunately, he's just crumbled a few times. This is a trend at this point. This has happened a few times.
When he matches up with Jaden McDaniels, when he matches up with Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, all those dudes, they look like better defensive players than he is an offensive player. And that can't happen time and again. So he gets no excuses for me. I'm disappointed in Jamal. I really am. And especially because he was so good this regular season. And now it's like, yeah, I mean, if he's not going to be reliable enough in the playoffs, how many times are they going to keep running this back? I don't know. It's a big risk to move off of him. It is, because you have to replace that archetype. So, maybe if things go bad in Cleveland, they're like, hey, Donovan Mitchell, remember we technically drafted you.
True.
You come play. But barring some sort of crazy situation like that.
Because he still is. I mean, he isn't going to give you this in the playoffs, but he's still, 25-7 this regular season, man?
Yeah. But again, I mean, the playoff efficiency has been brutal for 3 straight years.
Well, so yes, I'm just saying it is really hard finding that player.
Honestly, I'm going to try to talk myself into a Donovan Mitchell trade for anybody who needs an explosive guard offensively, but also I want Donovan Mitchell to stay in Cleveland because I hope things work out for them this year. So I want Donovan Mitchell to be everywhere. But That's the kind of thing where I'd be like, okay, that could actually be an amazing opportunity for Denver. That could be the thing. I mean, if you are paying the same money to Donovan Mitchell that you would be Jamal Murray,
I agree.
Immediately that makes me feel different about this team in every way, because he's a more capable defender. He's a much more consistent playoff scorer, much more physically imposing. Like, that would be a game changer. But that is purely hypothetical, and that requires a pretty big thing going your way. Evil Crisis says, Rudy, Rudy, Rudy. Amen. Rudy. I should have done it that way, like the great film.
We got to go to bed. We got to go to bat for him, man. We have to dispel all the years of anti-Rudy Gobert propaganda by being very pro-Rudy Gobert and spreading pro-Rudy Gobert propaganda. That's the new wave.
I have been boldly pro-Rudy for years. I have been saying for years, respect this man. His offense may be ugly as hell, but he is an extremely impactful basketball player, and he is one of the greatest defenders to ever walk the earth. And feels good to have been on that side, because everybody loves to hate Rudy. He started the pandemic. He's got no bag. He's got no hands. This, that,
he does
the
have
other,
a bag
whatever.
now, so they can shut up.
He still does not have a bag.
But he threw 2 sick passes today, buddy. Okay,
he did. Yeah, man. What a great season from Rudy. Truly.
Anytime he makes, and I know he gets like an assist or 2 a game. Anytime Gobert hits a pass out of the short roll, it gets me a little tingly, man.
Dude, he was good off the short roll in this series.
He was great.
And I mean, Doris hit the nail on the head when she was like, why the fuck is Spencer Jones so worried about helping when Rudy's catching the ball around the free throw line and Jokic already has it contained? Like, make him make a play off the dribble, for the love of God. But if you give him an opening as a passer, he's taking it at this point. So shout out to him. Evil Crisis says, assuming Embiid didn't piss off a witch, Logan Camden is that witch, cursing him to a destiny of both injuries and being on the Sixers, do you think a healthy Embiid Jokic talks would be different considering Embiid's two-way value?
This is very theoretical, but I will entertain it. Maybe. My hang up with Embiid, because I definitely think there's a strong argument that peak for peak healthy Embiid is way more impactful than Jokic defensively because of what he can do as a rim deterrent and rim protector. I don't know if it would be offset by the massive advantage that Jokic has had as a playmaker for so long, because Embiid has been excellent as a passer and a playmaker in this series. Historically, he has kind of crumbled under, double teams and a lot of ball pressure and, really making him a quick decision maker. That's been a very recent development in his game over these past 2 years, where when he was at his peak scoring level, that was a pretty big limitation. Do I think they would be different? Yeah, they would probably be closer, and Embiid would probably have more guys going to bat for him because he was more available, and you could argue it. But honestly, though, I think it probably comes back to not necessarily health. If Embiid had won a title or something, and I guess it isn't related with his health, but I think that's kind of the leg that Jokic has above him, and the fact that, I don't know, Jokic just proved it to us in the playoffs, and that's when it mattered most.
100%.
And Embiid just didn't, unfortunately. I mean, he's had moments, and I'm glad. Like that 50-piece against the Knicks, that's a classic, man. I'm never going to forget that game. I'm never going to forget what he's done coming off of an appendectomy in this series, but it is still different. Jokic had an elite all-time playoff run.
Jokic averaged 30, 13, and 10 on 63% true shooting, and he did that going through Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, and Bam Adebayo, and leading to a top 2 raw offensive rating in the playoffs of any NBA champion in history. Like, all of that, to me, when you talk about playoff translatability, is so much more impressive than anything that we've ever seen from Embiid, especially because, like, peak to peak, man, Embiid really, really struggled in the playoffs. If you look at like his 3 best seasons, 2021 to 2023, when he was top 2 in MVP voting every year, just massive playoff dropping where he's giving you like 25 a game in the playoffs, and he's averaging way more turnovers than assists. He's at 3.6 turnovers to 2.7 assists, and the scoring efficiency plummets. And it really comes down to major issues dealing with double teams and like serious black hole tendencies and problems as a decision maker, and not being able to beat those looks. And then his jump shot just really leaving him. And at times him not getting some of the same calls that he did in the regular season. And also, I think even some issues getting up and down the floor in transition in certain matchups. But it's more so the passing and the jump shot being such major letdowns in the playoffs year after year when he was at his best as a player. I can't overlook that. Regular season, if you want to have a conversation, but in terms of the postseason, no. I don't think we can do this revisionism with Embiid because until 2024, until that Knicks series, almost every single playoff series of his career was a big disappointment. And he was playing through something in a lot of those. But if there's a couple things that aren't really going to be affected by injury, I mean, it's your decision making, and your jump shot is usually not as affected. Although I think, in some of those series, maybe his legs were shot, but I don't think it would be a legitimate conversation. And I think we had this play out in real time, and there's a reason that Jokic totally pulled away. And now that Jokic had a very bad season, people want to reopen it, but it doesn't take away that Jokic has reached much higher heights than Embiid at this point in the playoffs. Renzo says, what are we saying about Wolves versus Spurs? I think we're going to do a preview on that probably tomorrow. So we'll get more into that. But I think the biggest thing is just when can Ant play?
Yeah.
Because the Spurs are going to be favored to me no matter what. If Ant doesn't play, it's not going to be interesting because the Wolves cannot athletically do to the Spurs what they did to the Nuggets. So I don't really see any advantage they have in that matchup.
The Gobert-Wemby matchup is going to be fun and interesting. The French connection.
Fun for us Wemby goat truthers. Yeah, not so fun for Gobert. He's going to be right back to getting slandered. They're going to be like, oh, he can't stop that 7'4" guy from shooting over top of him and raining threes over top of him. What a bum.
It's like, yeah, man, nobody can. Yeah, dude,
he got his shit packed. He scored 4 points per game in this series.
That's my favorite Gobert slander clip of all time, when Luka hit that 1-3 on him, and it's like Gobert had been pretty good in that series in space and actually wasn't that bad. But of course, Luka hits that one shot, and it's, Gobert is such a goober defensively.
Yeah, well, Luka hates Gobert. And then Luka was like yelling at
talking
him.
shit, yeah.
But it is true, that's not the one. It's like Steph crossing him, that's a much more valid one. He did have kind of like a Bambi moment on that Luka one too, but man, he's got so many, and he got his lick back versus Luka in the playoffs last year. He defended him so well in that matchup. So shout out to Rudy Gobert. Brendan says, Jokic is so bad on defense. I think he needs the cat treatment and turn into a power forward because Denver's insane lack of rim protection is so exploitable.
Well, this is where I think it would be nice to have not a permanent move to the 4 spot, but it would be nice to have kind of a versatile 5-man that made up for what Jokic doesn't have, like a big body rebounding. This is a very specific archetype because you're making up for very specific limitations that Jokic has. Like okay, you know what? Let's make it simple. Instead of describing
Deron Holmes.
I was going to say, if you could supersize Aaron Gordon, that would be perfect. We don't even really need the shooting, just like an athletic rim protector.
I honestly think if you have Aaron Gordon,
I do too.
I mean, like,
I do too.
We saw the Nuggets in 2023 be a top 4 playoff defense. We saw the Nuggets last year be an above average playoff defense. This year, I would still say their defense was not the problem. Their offense not nearly playing up to their standard was the problem. So Jokic was bad defensively in this series for sure, but it's not like we haven't seen him be totally solid defensively in the playoffs when he's active up at the level and he's making plays with his hands and his positioning is really good and he's an elite defensive rebounder. The rim protection is always bad, no doubt. It was particularly bad in this series, I thought, though. He was just not offering any resistance. But the fact that we've seen it work at a relatively high level in the playoffs makes me think you don't need to do any sort of overreaction. Like when he and Aaron Gordon share the floor in the regular season, let's do the last 4 years. Why not? They are better than 2 points, better than league average defensively in the regular season, and they're 2 points better than average defensively in the playoffs. So when they have all the dudes healthy, they can be a very solid team defense because they do tend to play pretty connected on that side of the ball. But you take Aaron Gordon out of it and you take Peyton Watson out of it, and if you don't have the resistance in terms of perimeter defense and you don't have the help and the length and the additional rim protection of guys like that, and especially Gordon, then yes, it looks very ugly. But Jokic is a center. He's going to remain a center. Gabriel says, off topic, What do you think about Jenkins to Milwaukee?
I think
Better
that's
than Doc.
one of the least attractive jobs in the NBA.
It is. It 100% is. You don't know what you're walking into. You're walking into a disaster
And also,
of one kind or another.
all the vibes talk that they, and obviously that's with Doc at the helm, but like it sounds like that. Not only is it just Giannis potentially leaving, like it just sounds like the vibes in Milwaukee are kind of horrible.
They are, absolutely. I probably wouldn't be interested in that job, but I do think Taylor Jenkins is a pretty good basketball coach. I think he built a good culture in Memphis, and I think they did a good job with player development. Will that translate? We'll see. Sham God 41 says, as a Laker fan, this Jamal Murray stinker brought a tear of joy to my eye. It's forever F Jamal Murray.
I bet they can't believe that Jokic is shooting like this from the perimeter.
Lakers fans?
Yeah.
No, they got the worst of it. But they really got the worst of it from Jamal because he has played some big-time basketball against the Lakers for sure. I want to see just his numbers against the Lakers compared to everybody else. StatMuse won't let me. They cut me off for the day. Whatever. But yes, congratulations, Sam God. As somebody who owns a This Guy Loves Jamal Murray shirt, it's not great to see. But I have to say, that shirt was given to me many years ago. And I don't love Jamal Murray as much as I used to. I'm sad to say. We've seen the downside of it too many times. Kelly Huang says, team vibes can't be underrated. Minnesota would not allow Denver to beat them at home in front of DiVincenzo. Philly is playing for and with Embiid, plus Maxey's happiness is infectious. Need to play for something. I think it's a great take.
Yeah, I definitely think Minnesota brought it, but that's also what's so confounding about the Denver experience tonight. Dude, it's Game 6. You guys have nothing else to play for, and you're playing like this is a regular season basketball game. So,
and that's where I do kind of question the leadership, like of Jokic and Murray. It's like,
agreed.
Where is the tone setting? You guys have won a championship. That's fantastic. That was 3 years ago. Since then, in your biggest games, you've been outplayed, and intensity and urgency shouldn't be a question in Game 7. And they are a team that just has bad vibes. Again, we talked about like Jokic kind of spiraling emotionally, but just they did not gel like a unit. They did not buy in as a team like the Timberwolves did. So, Kelly, I'm with you here. I do think it means something.
The glue?
Michael Porter Jr. was the glue because he had such phenomenal tips for all the fellas in life and in love and in everything. Shout out to MPJ. Shamgod says, I know it's early, but thoughts on the Wolves next year? Even with Dante out, I think with the emergence of TSJ and Io, they can be contenders. It is early. I mean, I guess you can pack them up if you think Ant's not going to play, but I mean, they're advancing to another series. But absolutely, I just have a lot of appreciation for the Wolves as a playoff team. This series cemented that. I think their physicality consistently translates and scales really well. I think their lineup versatility with this top 7 they have, Io is awesome. Like, I think at this point we should just pencil the Wolves in as top 5 contenders every year and say, fuck whatever they do in the regular season. They can have their low effort stretches. They're a team built for the playoffs. So yes,
agreed.
They will be contenders. I agree with you there. Okay. Max says, I don't think y'all have picked the T-Wolves to win one series in the past 3 years. The team people have disrespected the most come playoffs every year. That is actually not true.
I mean, I don't think I've picked the Wolves. What I will say is I
picked the Wolves to beat the Suns, and I picked the Wolves wrongly to beat the Mavs in the Western Conference Finals. But I didn't pick them to beat the Nuggets either time. That is true.
I didn't pick them to beat the Lakers either.
Neither did I.
Yeah, what makes me mad about this year is my 2 takes I was dug into most in the regular season for the NBA and NFL, I moved off of. And I'm just still mad at myself. The Bills, I said all regular season I didn't believe in.
We're back to this now.
The playoffs came around, and I bought in on them, and they got me. And all season long, I was like, Minnesota's going to figure it out. And then they played such bad basketball down the stretch. I was like, I don't know. I didn't like the vibes. And, at this point, they have just earned my respect. And I wish I had kept my heels dug in on Minnesota because, again, if there's one trend that we've seen from these playoffs, not to beat a dead horse, athleticism, physicality, lineup versatility, it's going to translate. And the Timberwolves are just a really, really good basketball organization. And shout out 100%. Them. Shout out Chris Finch.
I guess. Shout out Tim Connolly. Shout out to the team for sure.
No, rocking with Chris Finch.
I don't think he's the best. But I do think the Wolves are really good. And you are right, Max. Like, I just said I have a lot of respect for them as a playoff team. I didn't pick them to win this series, so I didn't respect that enough to pick them to win when I should have. And they're not just a really bad matchup for Denver. They're a tough team to deal with come playoffs. They are built for playoff basketball in a lot of ways, and they proved that even without Anthony Edwards on the floor, which is pretty incredible. Whoopity Scoop D says, I feel, though this might be influenced by today's game, Boston is on the Knicks level, not OKC, especially after what we saw last year and Boston being a worse team this year. What the hell happened to Derek White?
I don't know. I disagree. I think that Boston has played really good basketball all year long. And I mean, you can draw conclusions from the Knicks beating the shit out of a bad Atlanta Hawks team. Like, I also think that even though the Hawks are a higher seed, I think Boston is playing the better playoff team and the better team, period. Like, that's not even that hot of a take. Like, Embiid and Maxey are just so much better
No, the
than
Sixers are
anybody
100% better than the
that,
Hawks.
that Atlanta
Not
can
even
turn
close.
to. So I get it. We're caught up. We're in the middle of the playoffs. Celtics had a bad game. Knicks had a dominant game. Remember that context. The Atlanta Hawks are the Atlanta Hawks, and the Philadelphia 76ers have a Joel Embiid and a Tyrese Maxey playing. So I think that's why that's been so close. I am disappointed that Boston didn't finish off Philly before 7 games. But to me, I don't know how you feel. I don't feel any differently about them as a contender, though. And I think they're still my favorite in the Eastern Conference.
They're still my favorite in the East, but I do agree that they're not on OKC's level. And I do think I like the Spurs more than them at this point, too. I think this series has made me a little bit lower on Boston because I don't like
I
the
don't know.
big situation. And now I'm a little more worried about some of these bad offensive tendencies creeping back in. And also, I'm a little worried about them not getting the easy stuff offensively. I still think they're the most complete team in the East. I still think they win the conference, but I don't think it's like some coincidence that they're headed to game 7. Because, like, yeah, Philly is 100% better than Atlanta, but they still shouldn't be in a game 7. They should have taken care of business quicker.
They've been in my 3 spot. They're still in my 3 spot behind San Antonio and OKC.
They're still in my top 3. They're still in my top 3, but I have not liked what I've seen this series. As somebody who has been a Boston propagandist, I'm going to ride the wave. I mean, I've had them making the finals for a long while now, and I'm going to stick with that. But they are in game 7 in the first round, and OKC obliterates whoever is in front of them by 100,000 points. Obviously, I've always had OKC as clearly the number 1, but I don't know if Boston is quite as big a threat of them as I thought, but we'll see. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they respond from here on out and what level they can reach. Tatum and Brown got to be better. That's a big part of it. Those guys have to be better. Also, Derek White, yes. What the hell, man? What happened to his shot? Although he did actually shoot well today, but he wasn't that involved in the offense. So I want to see more out of him. Defensively, he's been great, though. Brett says, this is why y'all the GOATs. The GOATs. Thank you, Brett. I think this shows San Antonio was going to beat Denver. Really disappointed in Denver. I know Aaron Gordon is important, but I agree. I think Denver is going to beat San Antonio was too popular a take. I'm not saying it's egregious, and we'll never know, and it's a very different matchup, and Jokic played great against Wemby. But if Aaron Gordon wasn't going to be 100%, no way. I'm sorry. I don't think Denver was going to win that series. The Spurs are a better basketball team, and they were going to have a hell of a time trying to deal with that Spurs offense, trying to deal with those guards and trying to deal with Wemby. So even if Jokic was great, I still would pick the Spurs. Would have picked the Spurs.
Yeah, I think they've got a lot of the similar advantages that Minnesota has. And even though Jokic, I think, would have fared better in a matchup against Wemby, it's just a track record. Like, I don't think it makes up for some of the areas where Denver falls short. San Antonio's just been such a great team. And I know it's weird to people that they're so young and that they're this good, and Denver's one of the established big kind of brands in basketball. Wemby is transcendent, and you can't take that for granted. Also, if we want to talk about some big picture conversations, if there's anything that's going to add the most fuel to the fire for Wemby being the best player in the world or second best player in the world, it's a series like this. And I'll tell you right now, I'm very close to shuffling Jokic to 3 if Wemby has a good series. I'm already close there now, but I see a few more good games out of Wemby in these playoffs, and I think it will be pretty easy for me to slot him in.
It's a conversation we're going to have after these playoffs for sure. And I'll tell you this, Jokic's reign as best player in the world,
it's over. It's been over for a few
We've
months
been saying
now.
Shea's the best player in the world for months. But I'm saying with Shea being at this level, with Wemby being at the level he's already at and ascending, and with Jokic really struggling down the stretch of this year. Like, I don't want to overstate it because he's Jokic and the standard is very high, but post-injury, he was not the same. And this is a really bad playoff series. So when you think about the ease of the team build, Shea already is the hyper-efficient GOAT-level scorer, plus playmaker, plus defender, insanely low turnover guy. Like, he's him, okay? And with how he's looked in these playoffs so far, I think he's just going to cement that. And then Wemby being one of the greatest defenders ever, who is also this hyper-efficient offensive weapon who's super impactful on that side of the ball, versus having to work around Jokic's negative defense if his offense isn't going to translate in the same way in the playoffs. It's going to be a very real conversation this year. And by next year, I don't see how Jokic is better than Wemby. I don't. And Shea's already better than him. So that's something that the NBA world is going to have to come to terms with, I think, because really we've been calling Shea the best player in the world for a bit, but that's not a common take yet. It really isn't. And I think this series is going to make it one. I think it has to. And I think Shea continuing to do what he's doing, or even Wemby. I think one of those guys is going to be viewed as the best player in the world. I think it's going to be Shea.
Agreed.
But I think there's a real world where I legitimately think that Wemby is the second best player. I thought he was the second best player this regular season. I thought he was more impactful than Jokic. And he has played a hell of a lot better in the playoffs so far than Jokic did in that series. Hey, it's Ash says, I would die for Jaden McDaniels as a Wolves fan. Of course. Of course you would. You take 1,000 arrows. You take 1,000 bullets right to the dome.
He's a heart and soul at his team. What a good contract, too, man. He's one of those guys that his offensive game has actually grown after he got the bag, right? Like, because there's a lot of projection in some of these contracts, especially about guys we've talked about, like a Christian Brown. Like, he's just naturally going to get better. Jaden McDaniels, and he started to make the leap last year. This year is when I think you've really fully seen it realized. Like, the first little baby steps last year were him really getting good in transition, and then over last year and this one, it's been about him putting the ball on the floor, attacking closeouts at a high level, that intermediate shot making, and becoming a more dependable ball handler and three-point shooter. McDaniels rocks. Speaking of guys who were just, top 50 kind of caliber basketball players that may not have the kind of counting stats, McDaniels is one of those guys. He's a dog. And Jaden McDaniels, I don't want to sound like a kid. Jaden McDaniels has a terrifying aura, man. He really does.
He does.
I would not want to be in a heated playoff battle. I would be scared. That guy is scary.
Bro, he would be so deep in my head. It would be over the second I set foot on the floor. Like, yeah, he's a monster. I mean, in this series, 18, 7, and 3 on 55% true shooting. That does not tell the story of his impact, because my God, what he did on Jamal Murray and him stepping up without Ant. Again, it's like those little runners. As a driver, he was so damn good in this series. Still not a reliable three-point shooter. When he really gets that going consistently, if he ever does, he's one of those guys who shoots a pretty flat shot. And so it doesn't necessarily look super reliable from 3, and it isn't super reliable. But if he gets that figured out more consistently, what a basketball player. Already what a basketball player. Such a winner. Such a dog. Evil Crisis says, sorry for the chat spams. Please don't apologize. We appreciate them all. But I am in the mood for slander. You can't really. The gaps between the East and West in the 2019 to 2024 NBA was that drastic. So it says a lot. Denver got worse as the West got better. So I think he's saying the gap between the West and the East in 2019 to 2024 wasn't that drastic. There wasn't a great team in the West. Like in 2023, Denver was the 1 seed and they won 54 games. 2022, the Warriors won it. The Suns were the 1 seed. They won 64 games, but I mean, they didn't feel like that great a team. 2021, they made the finals, but they didn't feel like that great a team. 2020 Lakers, that was a pretty great team, but that was a one-off. 2019, the Warriors were still around, but they got hurt. Yeah. I mean, like you look at the Clippers in 2021, I think that was a great team, but they got hurt. So it's true, between injuries and they're not really being a consistent dominant force. I mean, the West certainly was not what it has become. Just the OKC factor alone. OKC ascending, where it's like, oh, they win 68 games and they win 64 games and they're top 10 in net rating. Like, that's different. But also San Antonio is better than the best team in the West some of those years that you're talking about. But I don't know. I don't really feel any inclination to do like revisionism on the Denver 2023 title. I'm seeing a lot of that, and I'm like, we watched it. We watched them execute an incredibly high level
We
offensively.
did.
We watched Jokic play like one of the very greatest offensive players ever. We watched them defend
He
pretty
shot
well. They did all that.
he shot over
And
40% from deep, man. Like, there's nothing that
that was big. And that was big. And he fried all these dudes one on one. Bam was too small, couldn't do anything with him. AD, he absolutely barbecued. They tried to use AD as a roamer. He barbecued them in those looks.
Jokic's
He
matchup.
went through Ayton like he was tissue
Yeah.
paper. He dropped 53 on them. And the Sun said, "Ooh, we did our job because we made him a score." Like, that's the level Jokic was at in that run. Think about that. He
You
had
can't forget that.
53 points and 9 assists on insane efficiency, and the team scored 120 something points, and the Suns were like, "We did our job."
And that's why I don't feel bad about any take I would have made about Jokic then about being the best offensive player alive or the best player in the world. And that's why I don't
It
feel
was
bad about
true.
changing my mind now when SGA has been having one of the greatest guard seasons of all time. So I agree. I'm not, and I think his matchups individually alone, what he did to
Yeah.
Gobert, to AD, to Bam, you can't rewrite that. He balled out,
Yeah.
Denver's offense balled out, and that was an all-time playoff offense and an all-time playoff performer. So
Totally. I mean,
respect Big Yoke, man.
2021 to 2025, he was the best player in the world. Last year, it's a real conversation between him and Shea, for sure. In the early years, 2021, 2022, you could argue it between Giannis, Steph. Like, I'm not going to say it was totally clear cut. My opinion was he was the best player in the world over those 5 years. Really, the only take about Jokic that I regret was saying that he was at the highest offensive peak in NBA history. And I just don't think it translated to the playoffs at that level outside of 2023. That one run, absolutely. I still think it's the best individual offensive postseason run ever. But 2024 was not that level. 2025 was not that level. And this, good God. And maybe we're not looking at absolute apex Jokic anymore. And maybe he was alternately just in a slump, like a prolonged shooting slump after the injury. We don't know 100%. We'll see how he responds next year. But he's still definitely a top 3 player on the planet. And still one of the great offensive floor raisers in NBA history and all of that stuff. But yeah, like we're saying, Jokic isn't getting any better. And Wemby is getting better. And Shea might keep getting better. Shea certainly got better this year, and he certainly got better last year, and he got better the year before that. So considering the fact that he is no longer the top dog individually in the conference, and Denver doesn't have rosters as good as those two teams, it's tough to look at this picture and be like, oh yeah, Denver's going to win another title. I mean, they got to get to the Western Conference Finals again. And that's going to be a hell of a task for them to pull off. Whoopity Scoopty says, I never want to hear Denver fans call SGA a flopper and free throw merchant after what their GOAT was doing tonight, flopping like a fish at 7 foot, 300 pounds.
I hate flopping in general. I also hate the SGA is a flopper narrative. But yes, Jokic was doing some egregious shit out there tonight.
He was.
That one where he was like leaning back after Gobert hit him like that.
That was crazy.
I hate all that. I hate all that actor stuff, man. It plucks my nerves.
I hate it too. It's very annoying. There's a line between I have to show the ref the contact and I am inventing the contact or like egregiously exaggerating the contact. And I actually thought a few years ago, Jokic was one of the few superstars who didn't really do much like grifting or like real appealing to officials for calls. He's always complained, but he wasn't doing as much of like the flopping, and now he does a ton of it. And he does a ton of it off ball. He does it on box out situations. Like any time that he's being illegally contacted, he's going to make sure that the refs know. And it is kind of an ugly look. It is unfortunate that there's very few stars who you can't point at and say, oh, they flopped there, they grifted there, etc. But I think that also makes the point that it's just a reality of the NBA these days. And that's why, for the love of God, when people talk about Shea, who shoots 55% from mid-range and 70+% at the rim and is one of the most efficient players ever at putting the ball in the basket in live play, take the free throws out of it, it's always baffling to me. There are other people to point to. Not to say that Shea doesn't have his grifty moments, his flopping moments, because he does, but like, come on, man. Appreciate the greatness of him and understand that it's kind of an unfortunate reality of the NBA today, that some stars are going to flop. Kaylee says, Wolves in 6, Wild in 6. I love my great nation of Minnesota. Shout out. Did the Wild win in 6? Are they going to win in 6? I have no idea what's going on.
Minnesota is just up right now, and they just big dog Denver.
Hell yeah, dude.
Shut up,
Hell
Candy.
yeah.
Shut up, Minnesota.
For real. Major Flex says, thanks for the great content. I always look forward to the stream after the games. As a Jazz fan, can you give me anything to look forward to or positive about the team? It's tough. That front court's going to be awesome next year.
It's gonna rock.
It's going to be super interesting to see how it all works.
Thank you, Major Flex. Also, you do have Bryce Sensabaugh on your roster. Don't take that for granted, my friend.
You do have Bryce Sensabaugh, who I don't know if you know this. According to Pablo Escobar,
best
who has done a lot of great reporting, he's the best mid-range scoring prospect in NBA history. And if Will Friday would just unleash him, he could do unimaginable things. Yeah, I think the Jazz are going to be interesting. I mean, am I optimistic about where they're headed as a team? No, not really. I think they are pretty invested in a core that in this West is probably not going to be good enough to get them to the playoffs, but I think they're going to be interesting. And that is something positive that I could say about the Jazz. Also, something positive. You guys had AK-47 on your team, and he was awesome. He was amazing. Okay, Baba G Cut says Tatum might not even play calf tightness.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that, but that does change the dynamic.
That would be really, really bad. That would be so bad for all of my Boston optimism. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we're not going to get a report on that until we're closer to the game. That's not good. That's not good at all. Nael says, Nugs need to lock in before we get another Giannis saga.
Dude, I wonder less of if it's going to be a Giannis saga in this like drawn out, do we get rid of him, do we not? As much as Jokic just says, peace, y'all. I got my bread.
Horses.
I hooped it up. I'm going to go ride my horse and go bet on my horse.
Is he too big?
He's got to have some giant, massive.
How giant?
Dude, there's no way that guy likes horses that much and doesn't ride them, you know?
He's like 300 pounds, though.
I know, but
it's like, have you ever seen the Nathan For You episode where they sell people on the like horse riding experience where they attach balloons to them to effectively make them lighter? He'd have to do it that way. You have to be balloon horse riding.
They got to have like a battle horse or, you know, like,
what year do you think Serbia is in? They're in 2026, just like the rest of us.
You think they're
not preparing for battle on horseback?
There's got to be some big horse he can ride. Let me look that up real quick. There's got to be some picture of Jokic.
I'm sure that he does ride the horses sometimes, but I think he mostly just loves watching them.
Oh, no. Most of these clips, he's in one of them little carriages behind.
That's what I'm saying, dude. You got to think about the horse's health.
You might be right.
If they break a leg, they're gone.
Oh, you got to put them down. They're done. Yeah.
Which sucks so much. Fuck, I hate even thinking about that.
Jokic looks so funny in this little cart, bro.
Yeah, I know. On the Giannis saga front, I don't think it's going to get that bad for Denver because the Bucks were really incompetent around Giannis. And the other important thing is Giannis has had major health issues. Like Giannis has struggled to stay on the court. Jokic is super available, and they didn't trade for a Damian Lillard who then tore his Achilles and they stretched and extend that contract. You know, like there were so many things that went wrong for the Bucks, like that entire core regressing, getting older, getting worse, them not addressing it, then them going all in on Dame, that going really wrong as Giannis can't stay healthy. That's really been a perfect storm of disaster. I think the Nuggets are more likely to just be like first round, second round. I don't know that they're going to be really contending again until they do make some sort of big change and big improvement to this roster. Miscellaneous Cam says, if Magic make the Eastern Conference Finals, do they keep Mosley? If not, who?
If they make the Eastern Conference Finals,
Finals, yeah. Yeah. I don't like Jamal Mosley, but you're not going to be able to fire him coming off of that.
I agree.
If they hire someone else, I don't know. Who are the hottest coaching candidates? I feel like somebody's going to try to swoop up Micah Nori. He's been a key part of that Wolves staff for a while, but they'll probably keep Jamal Mosley, honestly. I mean, even pushing Detroit to 7, that's a good outcome for them in the playoffs.
Do you think somebody's trying to lure Mike Malone back out?
Mike Malone's going to UNC. He already signed.
I forgot about that. You're right.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah. A. Beekstein says, weren't you the guy that picked the Hawks? Nope. I picked the Knicks in 7. I assume that's at me because I did pick the Knicks in 7. Yeah. I did think it was going to be a close series. It was not a close series.
Oh my God, dude.
The Knicks put BTA in those last couple games.
Tibbs to the Magic, bro. Tibbs
is the most Magic coach. That's like bringing Steve Clifford back. Why don't they just bring Steve Clifford back?
Bro,
Why don't they hire PJ Carlissimo? Why don't they literally hire a 90s coach? They're playing 90s basketball. Why don't they get Don Nelson back out there?
Dude, as I have gotten older, I think Tom Thibodeau that guy's just not a winner. I just have really thought about his coaching style and how he coached. And
Don Nelson is only 85, bro. He would be great. Although, actually, no, he's too progressive a basketball mind. He was like, let's go small ball.
Now, you know who we need? They need to break. They need to break out Lenny Wilkins.
Is Lenny still alive?
We need to get Lenny.
Lenny Wilkins is not still alive. Lenny Wilkins died last year, man. I don't know how to tell you this.
R.I.P. Lenny Wilkins, man.
But yeah, he and Don, they go together in a nice little basket of crazy coaching longevity. All right. What a day of basketball, Logan. I, for one, am surprised. I shouldn't be surprised by anything at this point, though. Anything is possible. Mayhem is inevitable. We know nothing. I know nothing. And that's the NBA playoffs in 2026. That being said, we do have a great slate of games tomorrow. We do now have Spurs Wolves to preview, but we've got Pistons Magic, we've got Cavs Raptors, we've got Lakers Rockets. Real quick, no elaboration. Just give me your picks for those games.
For tomorrow?
Yeah.
I'm definitely taking – I'm going to take the Rockets again.
Okay.
I'm going to take the Cavs. The Cavs scare me. They have been janky, but I do think they're the better team. And then, yeah, down Franz, I'm going to take Detroit.
Yeah.
Or not. Yeah, I'm going to take Detroit.
I'm going to take Pistons, win the possession game, win the basketball game, plus Franz is out, plus W. Cade. Cavs, I think, are going to take care of business. The Raptors, injury stuff is concerning, and I do think the Cavs are the better team. And I am going to take the Lakers to get it done. I think you're due for a better LeBron plus Reeves game. However, I'm rooting for as many game sevens as we can get. Let's just game 7 max, dude. Let's get as many of them on the board as we can. I want at least 3 of them. I would love to see that. So we will see how many we are treated to after tomorrow night's games wrap up, when we will see you all here live. We appreciate you all tuning in. As always, if you want all of our content, you know where to find it. You can watch all of our full episodes right here on YouTube Live, or after the fact. You can also listen to all of these shows across all audio platforms, and you can follow us across social for all of our daily content. So with that, as always, we appreciate you guys oh so much. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.